Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in. We're going to be talking about adoption. If you want to ask questions, I'm an adoptee. I talk about, hi, baby. If you want to ask questions, that's cool. If not, that's cool too. We're going to be talking about adoption. I'm right here if anyone wants to pop up. If anyone wants to come up and talk, that's cool. Putting some dishes away. Hi, Baby Bear. Welcome in, welcome in. Talking adoption or books, whatever. But the plan was adoption. So, if you have any questions, hi, Bear. Bear is I don't know if you can see him. Hold on. Hello, Casey. How do I haven't gone live in so long that I forgot how to. Can I? No. Trying to take off the green screen for a minute. But if you want to come up and ask, never mind. I forgot to do it. This is the topic. We're just chilling. Put a little bit of music on. So, just waiting for people. You can come in. I was just recording some adoption related stuff for my other channel. Talking about some true crime stuff. Welcome in, welcome in. Welcome in, everyone. Pop up on the channel if you have questions to ask. Welcome in. If you have questions to ask, feel free. I will answer. You could pop up on the panel. That's totally cool. Welcome in, welcome in. Welcome in. Come say hi. You can pop up on the panel and talk. I don't bite. I promise. Not much anyway. Just kidding. Just kidding. Really, Cece? I hear you. Bear, where is she? Is she under the bed? My dog's just chilling. He's just chilling on the rug. Giving me a look like, how dare you, mother? How dare you not give me attention today? Oh, it has been quite the day.
The sun here is cheerful, not ominous at all.
Welcome in, welcome in. You guys can pop up on the panel and come talk to me. I'll just answer your questions. We can have a good conversation. Welcome in. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Come up on the panel. It's been a minute since I've been live, so I'm not getting the traction I used to. Come on in. Come say hi. Oh, that's where you are. Oh, gosh.
It's time for craft, cunning, and mischief.
You can ask questions. Really? I'm an adoptee. If you have any questions, why I say what I said. We lose human rights. It's not child-centered. Oh my goodness. Hi, Bear. What you doing? Oh, sweet, but oh, here, have that. Hi, how are ya? What are we doing? What are we doing, Fish? We're just chilling. Welcome in. Welcome in. Welcome in if you want to jump up on the panel to ask questions about the topic. That is totally cool. Or if you want to ask from down there, that's totally cool. Okay. May I ask you why you think that? I think they ran away. I'm an adoptee. I'm an adoption educator. This isn't just opinion, this is fact. Like, I think they're too scared to come up on the panel. Really? Okay. If you want to come up on the panel, you can. Oops. I think I accidentally invited that person. I was trying to see what their profile was. Darn it. I doubt they'll come up though. I doubt it. Again, if you have questions, feel free to ask. Welcome in, everyone. If you have questions about this, feel free to just ask a question. It's totally okay. I don't bite. Wait, probably need that. Darn it. Come on in, ask your questions. I'm an adoptee and I'm an adoption educator. This is what I talk about. It causes trauma for both the birth parent and the adoptee. It affects families long term.
You're in charge. Shall I practice my curtsy?
That's not what we're talking about here. If you have a question about adoption, you can come up.
You, my friend, are tops in my book.
Again, if you want to talk about adoption, you're welcome to come up. How about you mind your business what I eat? How does me eating salads affect you? Tell me. Because I do eat salads. But that's not what the fucking You know what? That's not what we're talking about. And if you're going to be rude, you're going to be blocked. Seriously, there's no reason to be nasty to people. Jesus. Can we talk about adopting empathy into our... Oh, God. Now I'm annoyed. If anyone else wants to come up and talk about adoption, this is what we're talking about. Because I'm just going to ignore that person. Dude! I'm not offended by salads. I'm offended by your fucking fat phobia. How does my health have anything to do with what the topic is? You want to talk about this? You want to talk about this? Hey, Olivia. You want to talk about how I don't have medical information for my family? How I'm chronically ill and yet I still go out and hike and swim 3 to 4 times a day. A day. My God, I cannot think. A week? You want to talk about why I'm on a path to bariatric surgery? You want to talk about that? Huh? Yeah, because that fucking affects me. But how does me not wanting to talk about eating salads right now affect you? It doesn't. That's what I'm offended about. I'm offended by your fucking fat phobia. Sorry, I'm yelling, Olivia, and I'm so sorry. And I didn't need a home. I had one. No, let him. He's just giving me views. And yes, I know I'm getting upset, but I just... He's want to talk when he's fat himself. Yeah, but you don't... You don't give a damn about people. You just want to be a bigot. Right? That's what you want? Hey, Olivia.
I just think it's kind of wild getting on here and talking about somebody's weight when you have your whole name and the job title that you do in your username. Mr. Bail Bondsman.
Whoa.
Right.
Oh,
That's
no,
alright.
that's. Oh, how have you been? I feel like I haven't talked to you in like 72 summers.
I know it's been crazy. We went through family court, and then Matthew broke my laptop last night, and yeah, that was a front. That was fun.
I'm not a mod, or otherwise I would have already blocked him.
That's fine. Just let him. I'm not afraid of you either. You're a douchebag. Point
Yeah,
blank.
you're a person who finds people for a living and then gets on random TikTok lives and goes, "Oh, look at you, Fatty McFatterson! Look, fat, 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 fat!" Like, what the fuck is wrong with people? Like,
Like, do you not know that it's easy to find people? No, you said eat salads. Do you not understand? I eat salads. Guess
yeah,
what I had
it was
last night?
implied. It was definitely implied. I mean, he could be obtuse, but it was definitely implied.
Guess what I had last night? I had broccoli. I had a lot of broccoli. Because I like fruits and veggies.
And salads don't make you skinny or healthy. I don't
Right.
even think I don't even think people understand that. Like, no amount of eating a salad is going to make you more healthy if you already have issues with your health. Like, what the
Exactly.
oh God. I can't expect a man to actually have a conversation beneath the like surface level though. I mean, he's a man. What do we expect?
Like, I'm literally on the path to bariatric surgery, and like, dude, I like salads. But that's not the topic here. I have a whole fucking cookbook of different salads. Like, what are you talking about? Dumbass. It's
And
the
it's
fat
because
phobia.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I said it's the fat phobia that's pissing me off.
Well, I mean that and the fact that he probably has nothing actual like value to add to any conversation.
Yeah, it's the Williams Sonoma. You can Google it. I'm not gonna go get up for you right now. I'm in the middle of doing something.
Oh. But how have you been? How was life? How's the baby?
He's all right. So he just, I don't know what the hell he did, but he broke my screen on my laptop last night.
No.
And it was gonna be more. Well, it wasn't gonna be worth. So was it gonna be worth? What do you call it? Replacing the screen versus just getting a new one. So I'm getting a new laptop, which
Yeah.
sucks because then I lose like half my work.
Um, and laptop screens are notoriously like
This is the third
ex
time.
yeah, expensive to fix.
Dude, I have chronic illness, you dummy. Like, I'm fucking disabled, you jackass.
Hey, Alienated, I haven't talked to you in forever. I've been doing nothing but shit posting, honestly. Oh, guess who inboxed me from a show that has two words in its first name that starts with T and M?
Oh, really?
Yeah, Tyler.
Yeah, I didn't talk to him on this one, but I talked to him on a different one. But he didn't invite me, which is fine. Like, I don't care, but
Well, like I said, he kept trying to apologize to me about like these really facetious comments he made about foster care. And I told him like you keep apologizing to me and it's not my apology to accept.
right.
Like you said that publicly to people, you need to apologize publicly to people.
Yeah.
Like you don't I can't just accept an apology on behalf of the adoptee community and the foster care community.
Right.
And so it was like a whole thing. And I just stopped responding to him because like I said, like I'm not going to hold your hand when I say anything.
No,
And
they're
it's just annoying.
like, here's my take. I don't think they're necessarily bad people. Hey, Rose. I think they're trying to do good overall, but I think that they are crossing lines when it comes to Carly's story.
Yeah.
And that I think they have a lot more to learn, and they should have gone and done that and done therapy and stuff instead of posting online.
And then the audacity of them to talk about infertility trauma and how people who are infertile need to go to therapy while in fact not going to therapy is insane. And it's just such a double standard to me. And um the path to hell is paved with good intentions, but they did not align themselves. And I think the key point in all of this conversation with CNT are that they did not align themselves with other birth parents. You know who they aligned themselves with? Adoptees. And I just think that that's a very, very specific choice because we validate how they feel,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we don't know that Carly will feel this way ever.
Right.
And
And then
so,
this
oh,
is
sorry.
why I think it's important, one, not to tell her story. And this is what I was talking about, like, you have to, thank you, Edwin. I think it's important that, like, when we talk about adoption, like what was it? My post the other day or yesterday, I said,
Yeah.
like, not every adoptee is going to feel the same way at the same time, right? Because how I felt at 7 is not how I feel now, right?
100%. Yeah.
Um, how I felt at 17 is not how I feel now,
Yeah.
right? So, and everyone goes through it differently, and I think that's what's important. And, like, we all have our own stories, right? So, not everyone wants a reunion. Also, they are public figures, right?
Yeah.
And this is what we're not. No, I mean, if you're an adult and you want that and you can talk to him, fine, I don't care. But that's not what we're talking about.
Adult adoption is probably the only form of adoption that could be adjacent to ethical.
Yeah, which I was just doing a video for my other channel, and I want to do, what do you call it? I was doing true crime, but it had to do with adoptees being serial unalivers.
Yeah.
And it was I'm starting with Eileen Wuornos.
Mhm.
I don't know if you know who she is, but
I'm a fan of Eileen Werner.
okay. Well, see, I've been seeing things. Okay, look, I think that she had mental health issues, right?
100%
She
substance abuse
had,
disorder.
well, yeah, okay. So knowing her backstory, first of all, her biological father had schizophrenia
Mm-hmm.
and unalived himself. She never knew him.
Yeah.
She was abandoned at 3, adopted by her grandparents. She had incest with her brother. Yeah.
Rose is also a fan of Eileen Werner.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so like there's just some things that I'm like, anyway. But so she had trauma on trauma on trauma, right?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it was in this, she was born in 1956. And I think, like, if we had more, I'm trying to think of the word, like more resources and trauma therapy and things
Well,
like,
yeah, it was a much different time back then. Yeah.
yeah. Like, I'm not saying it would completely stop what she did, but I definitely think it might have helped her. And,
I hate to say this, and over my years, because like I don't want to believe that people are inherently bad, right? Like, but what I have learned is that some people, despite all the nurture, all of the resources in the world, just don't ever become good, if that
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And so it's like for me, it's like Eileen Wernos is one of those rare representations of, first of all, a female serial unaliver, but also a product of the system, a product of her environment, and a product of her time. Um, which is just like I said, really rare. I don't even want to say rare. There were probably a lot of women who did things like that, but they just didn't get caught
Mm-hmm.
because people didn't believe women could do those things.
I made you a mod.
Okay.
Um,
I'm gonna mute this guy. I'm sorry. He's just annoying the shit out of
Okay.
me.
Yeah, so like there was just things like okay, sorry, I don't know what he's barking at. There was just things that she did. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, so she was adopted at 3, right, by her grandparents, and then she was a readopted. She was like 44, 42,
Mm,
by this Christian couple. They were like the same age as her, and I'm like, that's kind of weird, but okay. Like, I didn't like it. Didn't bother me so much because she was already in jail. She was already getting the death sentence. Like, it
yeah,
didn't really matter.
yeah.
Like, they were just the only reason they did the adult adoption in that circumstance was so that they could visit her and be her family.
Mm,
So I understand in that circumstance, like it wasn't a big deal. But I've been seeing more and more adult adoptees getting readopted by their biological parents. And I
yeah,
think that's been really kind of cool to talk about. Like,
yeah,
so I'm like, okay, like we're getting somewhere, you know?
yeah. And I think that there's that really tough intersection of being adopted and then also like not having that great relationship with your biologicals. Um,
Mhm.
I think that had my mom have gotten her life back together, I can't say that I would have ever done it though. Part of me part of me likes not having my mom's last name. Like I was excited when it happened.
Which
Um,
is totally valid, like who's
oh, also you missed a lot of drama, but like a lot of drama, but there were some live content creators who were being very misleading in how they were talking about the adoption industry. Hey Jet 71, if you don't mind, may I ask how you guys were, like what type of adoption you guys went through? Just get some more clarification on the adoptees here.
so here, this is part of it, is we lose rights, like we lose access to information, we lose here, they're coming up.
I was adopted. What information did I lose?
Hey,
So
so what type of adoption did you have? Do you mind me asking?
I don't know. I was a baby.
Okay, so
okay.
But
you're an
may I
infant?
ask? Yeah, but may I ask, like, what information you lose by being adopted?
Yeah, so for me, I lost medical records. I lost there were actually really important things. Connections to my siblings. I knew my siblings prior to being placed for adoption and there's a lot of different things. It varies situation to situation, honestly. Are you domestic
Okay,
or international?
domestic.
Okay.
But yeah, I could
Most,
see that, like, you lose maybe the relationship with your siblings or
and also most states
whatever
aren't
you had.
full.
But
Like you can't get your original birth certificate.
Yeah, that doesn't exist anymore.
Like there's only 12 states that are fully open.
Yep.
uh,
And now without that original birth certificate, they're not allowing people to get passports. And so if your name has been changed, you have to be able to provide proof of your name change. But when we're adopted, our records are falsified. So like my birth
You
that's
can
certificate,
get your
that's
you can
very
get your pre-adoption records. It's not
n-
hard. When you go in,
Depends.
you
yeah,
ask
not
for it.
in
I
not
have
in most
mine.
states. Yeah, but
right.
not in most states. In Michigan, you can't that it doesn't exist for me anymore.
It
And for a lot
depends.
of us, it does not exist anymore.
Right.
I
For
So
I
some
got
states.
mine.
well,
I mean,
okay, but
Yeah,
it
same
depends on
here.
the agency. It depends on the state.
yeah.
It gets very nuanced. Like mine was private. It wasn't even through an agency. Mine was completely private. Just a small lawyer. So
There is one thing that's considered unethical, in my opinion, about adoption. Is you're not in my view. I think it's wrong to give a child your last name because it strips
Mm,
them of their identity. And I think
yeah.
that's you may be able to take them away from their family for whatever reasons that needs to happen or not
Yeah.
happen, whatever the reason is. But I think it's unethical to give someone your last name because all you're supposed to do is be guardianship over them. Even the Bible. I'm not a Christian, but I've read the Bible too, and it's actually condemns it in there. That is completely wrong, and it's unethical. That part I agree.
Well, I did not know that. Where in the Bible does it say that?
I couldn't tell you offhand, but it's all throughout the Old Testament. They talk
Yes.
because a lot of times, even in a lot of Islamic countries, still practice what's called. This is the thing that we fight against too, because instead of adopting, they do a contract marriage, and we all argue on that, right? We all come up against them on that, and I'm okay. I'm okay arguing with them on that because I don't think that's right either. But um, we're supposed to do what's called a guardianship contract, not anything else.
And so actually, because I actually studied adoption through Islam for a while, and so the difference between how Islam does adoption and how the Western world does it is that they don't they don't consider it a contract marriage. I'm not sure why why that was said to somebody, but that's not how that works. So they don't
Well, they used
believe.
to. They have
Yeah,
changed it. They have changed
yeah,
it in the recent years. But
and
go
it
ahead.
depends
Sorry,
on
I
I
didn't
like
mean to interrupt
just
you.
yeah, no problem. It depends on the scholars you talk to. And so a huge part of it is they don't change the child's last name, and it's implicit in the Quran that they are not to change the name of the name from the father. And so especially with things going on how they've been going on since, before the Nakba, there are a lot of children who are orphans due to war. So when we look at adoption in the sense of Western adoption versus other countries, I think that there's a huge discrepancy versus like something like UK adoption, where it is almost impossible to purchase a child in the UK the way children are purchased in America. Um, and so I think that there's a lot of discrepancies within the different types of adoptions. That's why I asked how people were adopted, because depending on how you were adopted may change how you view it.
Was adopted through the system, the state system, and
Same here.
that was not a pleasant experience. There is so much abuse going on. At least in my, I'm 53, so we're talking about the 70s and 80s.
Hmm.
It was horrible. Um,
Yeah.
I actually got locked up in the Oregon State Hospital because of the adoption system was so back then it was so backed up that you could literally get transferred around to different foster homes for any reason. And
Yeah.
I literally went through at least 50 foster homes during my stint with the state.
And
It's unbelievable.
I've actually uncovered why that happens. So most foster parents are under a contract for a certain amount of time. And in the state of Michigan, how it goes is you can only stay in one home for 2 years because all foster care is now considered short-term emergency placement. And so the reason why children are moved so much is because a lot of times the foster parents are signing short-term contracts for those children. And once the contract is up, they choose not to renew them. It could be a mixture of behavioral issues, the child not meshing well with the family. There's a lot of different reasons, but on a state level, that is usually why that happens.
Wes, are you adopted?
No, but my girlfriend goes to a different school.
Wait, how do I kick him?
He just set off my dog.
Yeah, that's why I'm really cautious over, like, that's why I'm not adding anybody. Because
Um,
a lot of times you'll get those.
so Kai, so first of all, I did kind of answer you. So first of all, there's no orphanages in the United States and haven't been since the 1950s because we started putting money into foster care instead of to orphanages. There are no adoption centers where children just live.
No, there's residential facilities and they go depending on age and behavior of the child.
Yeah,
But there's no adoption facilities. There's no like warehouse of babies just waiting to be adopted.
right. And also the main goal. What?
How come
You were being
you?
fat phobic, Wes. Like, what the frick are you talking about? Anyway, sorry. Also, the main so agencies target impoverished families, right? And they're not supposed to, but they put up signs and like doctors, like if you need if you need to talk to someone, if you want to do an adoption, like they don't actually, they kind of just push it without giving you the full information. There's no therapy involved, like there's nothing. So what we should be doing, which is what a lot of, and look, I'm not trying to make this purely political because I think both sides are a problem on this, but it's been shown that Democratic presidents have more social programs which help families stay together, and then the adoption rates drop, right? So right, we lose 15 of our 30 human rights. It's not child-centered. Like, there's
Do you
a
know?
lot of reasons why it's not ethical at all.
Yeah, and even when we look at international adoption, Korea, China, Haiti, Australia, all no longer allow adoptions to America, right?
Russia.
So other Russia, Ukraine, there are a lot of countries now that exist that will not, or very, very, very rarely adopt out to people in America. And it's not necessarily a population thing. A lot of it is these children come with a lot of regrets over all of the things that they miss, their cultures. Um, just varying degrees of trauma depending on who adopted them. We have a mutual on here, and she was literally bought for she says $10,000 American flag merchandise and booze,
Mm-hmm.
and her family went over to Romania illegally and brought her home.
They started an illegal,
Adoption agency.
thank
Yeah,
you, Rose. Yeah,
yeah. So
mine was 20,000 in 1991.
yeah, I was net positive. Okay, I made my grandma money. But no, adoption is unethical depending on how it happens, and how much of us that we lose in all of this.
Right. Like there's kinship adoption, which is supposed to be more ethical. And I say is supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Um However, if the kin are not trauma informed and don't give you that information and don't provide the resources, it's still not ethical.
Right.
So
I think the issue. Oh, go ahead.
these two were fostered to adopt.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
You know,
was
if
good
they
at
would just
adoption.
allow guardianship style adoptions like Islam does, you mentioned Olivia.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, and I really appreciate that they've gone that route. If they did the same thing
No, we
here,
don't.
and then once the child reaches 18, if they choose to sign the adoption paper and choose to take their last name, I'm all for it. I don't have a problem
Yeah.
because then they're adults and they can legally do that. I don't think we should do that to these children. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's unethical.
And guardianship gets very complicated as well because it depends on the state and the laws and the situation. Like,
And at any point, guardianship can be contested. At any point during a
Yep,
guardianship, it can be
exactly.
contested. And
right.
so it can become an issue. I actually did a video recently, like maybe a week or two, about this, the cons that exist within kinship, fictive kinship, and guardianship, and how it can lead to a lack of like the feeling of permanency.
Mm-hmm.
And it can always leave that child, like it can leave that child always feeling like an outsider.
Yeah.
And so there are issues within each of the different versions of child welfare, right? Um,
Yeah.
some are maybe, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
So first of all, right, no, we don't get free therapy
At
or
all. I
support
never once received
resources.
therapy.
Not even in, well, it depends on state by state and what the agency and the location have for foster care, but most do not. Like if you're in a bigger, like New York City might have more options than where I am, upstate New York, right? We don't have a lot of resources.
And in Michigan, the only resources we received were if our foster parents asked for those resources. If they didn't ask, we didn't receive them. There
I'm in
were
New York.
no, yeah, and I'm in Michigan. So it does vary state to state. There needs to be a federal oversight. Um, because too many kids they get lost into the cracks, and I've talked about this before. Um,
Washington State's one of the worst.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
if,
but I
if
was actually adopted in Oregon, which is still one of the worst. Not much
so
difference.
so if I may, my sister adopted 6 kids through
Yeah.
foster care in Michigan,
Okay.
and all of them had access to therapy, and all of them
So
had access to higher learning, and all of them had access to medical care.
I did not find out that I was like eligible for any type of paid college until I was 26 years old, and I was already too old. I was adopted in the early 2000s, so there may have been some discrepancies, but I will tell you that after we were initially dropped off, we saw the caseworker once every 6 months. There was no oversight, and after we were adopted, I was placed back into the system due to abuse, and so it's there is a lot of um, dysregulation because of how independently these I call them businesses. These businesses are run. Even now,
Yeah.
when I was placed into care with my brother, and I'm still dealing with the ramifications of this, like quite literally as recent as yesterday. My brother's adoptive family not only didn't tell him he was adopted until he was 13, but they allowed us to come see him under we were never allowed to tell him we were his sisters. And so that should never happen in foster care. Children who were taken away together there should be a permanency contact plan so
Unless
that
it's
those
a
children,
safety issue.
There has
yeah,
been a lot of legislation and a lot of regulation that has come into place since the early 2000s. So,
yeah,
like, my wife and I looked into fostering and eventual adoption, and it's a lot different now. Of course, I'm in Illinois, my sister's in Michigan, but
yeah,
there's a lot more to it now. I will say a lot of people go through fostering to adoption because straight adoption is last time I checked, it's around like $23,000,
yeah.
and
But
it's so incredibly expensive to.
as someone who does foster care advocacy, it is so harmful for foster care is should be for respite, right? These are children in need of emergency care. And there are so many situations, much like my own, where I could not be returned to my mother. But going into foster care as a foster parent with the hopes of adopting is quite literally going into foster care with the hopes that a child is not reunited with their family.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
that is
So
a
the point of
dangerous place to have that.
yeah, the point of foster care, of course, is that you are that emergency, and that they always want to return to the original parents. But some instances that doesn't happen. Most instances it does. It depends on the particular situation. And I agree that there is a balance for a child, especially if it's a long term foster or you eventually adopt, of saying that you were adopted. You have to be careful for a small child because they've learned that bond with you specifically,
Hmm.
and you have to be careful how you approach that. So yeah, they should know for sure, but again, some terms of the like if there's an order of protection, it depends on the courts if they're even allowed to see the family, and then it's up to you as the guardian, temporary guardian, to make that decision. If it's a safe environment, how do you do that? And
Yeah.
and super
I
quick,
will.
my sister in Michigan, the reason she has 5 of her 6 is because the mother was addicted to rugs and had an addiction problem
We
and
don't need
was
to
just
tell
homicidal.
their story.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I want to add that, like, so you said foster care, and you said, um, yes, unethical is a word. Um, you said that there was, like, therapy. So first of all,
Hmm.
so like I was saying, like in most cases, it's not available, right? It would really depend on where your location is.
Hmm.
But you said your sister went through foster care, so they can have it mandated through the courts that they go through therapy,
Yeah.
right? Which is something that I did for co-parenting with my son. I mandated that he and his father go to family therapy.
So specifically, and again, the only 2 states I know are Illinois and Michigan. It's available. My opinion is that when someone is either fostering or adopting, they have to have that role of being an advocate for the child. And there is a percentage of people who are not advocates for their children. If they're not
Yeah.
continually seeking for resources, then I mean, I'm a parent and I know it's a hot take, but if you're not advocating for a child, then you're not really you're not really their guardian, you're not really their parent. You're just a
Yeah.
placeholder and the person to make sure that they're fed and clothed, and that's it. And I know that's a hot take, but my opinion is if you have a child, whether it's temporary or permanent, you need to be an advocate, find all the resources, make sure that, you know, they have a safe environment, a loving environment, and then that's the basis for everything.
So Pete, I gave experience from family court. He's not adopted. He's biological, a co-parent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
It wasn't adoption. He's biologically
I know
related.
stories, and then you gave one. So
Isn't co-parenting different than adoption or different?
Okay.
My-
okay.
That's
No,
what
So
I'm
does
trying
it
to
change what I
say.
said?
Like, it wasn't what my point was is that you can have it go through the family. Like, you can have it go through court.
Yeah.
I didn't give
And I-
everything that was in that court order. I just said,
But even then, that's your son and your son's father. That's different than somebody
Right.
talking about their nieces and their nephews,
Or
parent,
fostering.
or biological families being addicted to things. It's a totally different. It's apples and oranges. It's not the same conversation.
right.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree that it depends
story's a
state by
story.
state.
That's not what we're talking. We're talking about giving too much information in terms of someone it's not their story.
Sure. Okay.
That's what, yeah.
So what part of adoption do you feel is, and I guess I'm coming late in the conversation, what part is unethical? So should they always just be a guardian and not a quote adoption? Because I guess my experience has been anecdotal, where it's been positive for the children to be adopted as opposed to just being a guardianship.
So first of all, they still lose. Well, foster care still gets complicated. I know Olivia can talk more about this. You still have access to certain information, right, through foster care?
It depends. So when I originally got my records, everything about my siblings was redacted until they all turned 18. And then once everybody turned 18, I was able to get unredacted information. But all of the information I hunted down myself. The Lutheran Child and Family Services gave me nothing.
Were you able to get medical information or no?
No. Everything I did, I hunted down. I found family members. I collected all the Infinity siblings. And I hunted down aunts and uncles and people who just even knew my mom when she was younger. I was able to find out about my cousin who passed away at 32 from breast cancer. It's how I discovered we had the BRCA gene.
Mm-hmm.
Which was just really helpful because I have a daughter and she has the BRCA gene on both sides of her family.
Information
And so
gets
so there's a lot of things that Lutheran did not do for us. But again, Lutheran Child and Family Services isn't every adoption agency. It's not every foster care agency. So
Right.
what may have happened for us or didn't happen for us may not be the case for other people.
Well, and don't they have to be careful because they're minors releasing their information, so it has to be redacted? I believe that's the law. I may be mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
as long as my siblings were under 18, but that's why after they all turned 18, I was able to receive our state records.
Okay.
And that's how I was able to get it.
Well, that had to be a very emotional, but probably also exciting experience to find all of your relatives. So,
Oh,
It was at first, I'll say that. Now,
Yeah.
30 years later, I don't want nothing to do with any of them.
Ding 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 ding.
Yep.
it's
Um,
probably tough to be the one seeking out as opposed to the one being seeked, especially if you're the one that just turned the age to know who your family is. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
if you're the one that was never sought out. I would assume. Sorry for the assumption that would be
No.
kind of heartbreaking.
Oh,
in a
it's
way.
No,
They're-
it's
they're
so
on
crazy
point.
you say that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Disney.
I was gonna say no, it's on point because like they're foster. Well, I don't know about Pete here, but Jen and Olivia are both foster to adopt. I am private infant adoptee. I have three half siblings. None of them know that I exist. We're all over 18, and yet nobody cares. Not one person
You know,
cares.
when I turned 18, I was lucky. I actually had it easier than Olivia, only because of pure dumb luck. I was actually homeless at 18, and I was donating plasma because I'd gotten kicked out of. I was
Are you
aged out
me?
of the system. Huh?
Are you me?
Am I me? Am I you?
Are you me?
Almost. So yeah, so I basically got aged out. I was actually in a juvenile prison at that time. We won't go there or talk about that, but I got aged out at 18, and I went straight to my biological aunt and uncle's house, and then they dropped me off onto the streets after about 4 days. And so I spent the next 20 years trying to track down all my family. And 30 years into the whole thing, I gave up and I'd had enough. And so at 53, I technically, even legally, because of the way the system works, I don't have, because I was put up for adoption. They gave up, they released all their rights to me. So I was put into the system, put up for adoption. I was adopted, and after the first trial, 1 year trial period, my adoption was annulled, and I was technically awarded my own. I was awarded the state, but when I turned 18, I was awarded my own. I had by rights, I had no legal family ties to anybody. But I tried for 30 years to get connection, and it just wouldn't work. So now I'm a single guy with no family. Technically, I could die with debt up to my. I could pass on with debt up to my ears, and nobody can come after them. So that's a good thing.
I think there's so
But
many
yeah,
complex and nuanced things when it comes to adoption. Even when you mentioned how they gave you a trial period, like you were a couch, right?
right.
And
1 year. Yep.
yeah, they gave you 1 year trial period, and they were like, actually, this one's not for us. And then they just gave you back. And it's like, I don't think people realize how often that happens, or how often we leave either substance abuse homes, abusive homes, and then we end up in the same type of homes that we were removed from.
And every single foster home I was in had abuse in it.
Yep,
SA
every
abuse,
single one.
particularly, every single one of them. I was a victim of it, and all that. So it's like, yeah, I can tell you firsthand. It runs rampant, or at least at that time it did. It was very rampant.
Yeah. And then people always ask the most disingenuous questions. Well, what are we supposed to do with the kids? Throw them in a lake? And it's like, you know what? Yes, throw all the children in a lake. Let's have children of the lake. But no, I think that there's a lot of
Well, that's what they do in countries
unethical.
where they don't want surplus children,
You just had to ruin the joke,
like
sir.
in Asia. Well, no, I mean
Oh, no xenophobia. No
it's not a
xenophobia.
joke. Children are
Please.
getting murdered, and you're making a joke of it.
No,
So,
I'm not making a joke. I am
well, no,
Okay,
what do you
I'm
mean
repeating things that have
xenophobia?
been
I'm saying
said
in
to
She's
Asia.
me.
mocking what people are
So
saying. She's not joking.
Yes, I am
It's
like
called a
literally
mock.
mocking what people
It's,
say
she
to
just said it
it's
was
a
a joke,
joke.
though.
It's a dark humor joke for us because we get told this all the time. Oh, you belong in a dumpster. Oh, I've been told because
Cousin,
suicide.
I was adopted.
Okay, I'm just saying, suicide for adoptees and foster youth are at 4.25. Right? It's times, and it's higher than veterans. I've been told by non-adoptees, well, then you should have just unalived yourself.
Would you rather be aborted? That was a good one. There's so many things that non-adoptees say to us where it's like you wouldn't understand because you were a kept person, and kept people are not going to innately understand familial loss the way we do. It's just not the same.
I'm so thankful we didn't have this issue with abortion back in my day in the 70s and 80s.
It was still
Because I
around.
was born no, it was still around, but we didn't have quite as much moral, ethical discussions over
Yeah,
this
that
then.
vitriol response people have to it.
What are the
Yeah, and
alternatives?
I was born at 6 months. I was a preemie, and technically under today and age, I could have been aborted. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm thankful we didn't have that back then. Not as much anyway.
Oop, that was weird. So
Sophia says,
yeah, I was
oh,
gonna
go
read it.
ahead.
The alternatives that we generally talk about, and I do want to make a thing saying that it all still needs reform, right? Because none of it is perfect, and there still needs to be resources and therapy, right, and check-ins. If and when a child cannot stay with biological family, which resources should first be given to biological family, would be to kinship. So grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, brothers and sisters if they're old enough, right? Then it would be
Can
fictive
I say
kin. So
something?
family. What?
I was in a situation where they went and gave me to my uncle, and my uncle literally went back and dropped me off at my biological father's house so the abuse could continue
Right.
Right. And
So
so that's what
before I
she's
was
saying
adopted.
about,
So I don't
yeah.
know if that's really a good idea.
no,
No, so
but
that's
what
what
I'm
she's
saying
saying.
is that what I'm saying is that if and when things are not possible, that would be the first goal, but that still needs reform, right? So your uncle should not have done that.
Yeah,
Right.
neither should my grandfather, because whenever they found out
Yeah,
my uncle
that
was doing it,
was
my grandfather did it
that's the
too.
way it was in my time too. My grandparents tried
Right.
to adopt me, and they were able to adopt one of my sisters, but they weren't able to adopt me. I don't understand that either.
That happened to
Why?
me as well.
And this is
Yep.
this is why adoption is not unethical.
No, what I'm saying is that resources and having therapy.
I don't care, liberal. You're just crying about your life, and who gives a shit? I'm out of here, man. Fucking nerd.
Bye.
Good,
Nobody
get out
wanted
of
you
here,
here
bro.
anyways. Like, the
Dang.
fuck? Oh my God. And you
Why
can tell
such
he wasn't adopted.
hostilities? I don't get
Yeah, I
it.
don't
I
think
don't
he's
get the
adopted. Anyway,
hostility.
He's not adopted.
So those would be. I was on fictive kin, right? So then if that can't happen, right, like I said, still needs reform, then it would be fictive kin. Fictive kin would be family of friends or someone within the same culture. So think ICWA, Indigenous Children's Welfare Act. In the Muslim community, if you were here before, Olivia was a little bit talking about that, where Muslims will take the child in without removing any of that information. They'll keep the same name. They'll have all the same information as
The same rights to their original families. Yeah.
right. So that would be number 2, and then the last thing.
But I
Go
do
ahead.
want to say that fictive kinship is not, in almost all of our states, is not recognized and is not legal. And so I've been doing research into kinship, fictive kinship, and guardianship for the past 6 months, and it's not recognized by most states. So it's weird. My brothers, I just recently had my nephew. Okay, my brother's biological sister would be considered fictive kin because legally she's not his sister anymore, but I was considered kinship because I am legally his sister. So they dropped his son off to me instead of her.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they're biologically related, and I'm not. And so a fictive kin is a very, very, like, there's a lot of legalities that are not like recognized
in the
within it.
United States.
Yeah.
And then the last thing would be guardianship, which there's different types, and it gets even more complicated than that, because a lot of like foster care to adoption doesn't always recognize those guardianships, and it depends on state and all that, so it gets very nuanced. But in all these situations, we still need reform. Like, if they allowed us access to information, that would be 1,000 times better, right?
Yeah.
But because it's legally unethical, which is what I was talking about, yeah. Now, of course, there's going to be bad apples and everything, but we're talking about majority of adoption not being ethical. I got lucky where my adoptive parents were trauma informed. They went through therapy. They read all the majority of the same books that, we talk about. They did conferences. I was around adoptees my whole life. I was able to talk about it. I went through adoption therapy. So they knew they were open adoption, stayed open. I knew about my culture, although it gets complex because it wasn't near my culture. But there's just a lot that should be happening that just isn't, right? And like, in the instance where you shouldn't be around a certain parent, right? For example, my biological father is not someone I should ever be around for reasons. I still had my biological mother's side, right? So there's a lot to that should have happened. My older half brother was adopted by my great grandparents. They lived on the reservation, they didn't adopt me. I went to strangers, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah.
Even in the case with my siblings, so there were four of us who were removed, and Disney knows this, but even the case with my siblings, my adoptive mom was asked to take all four of us, and she had to say no to my two younger brothers due to disabilities and things of that nature. And she just wasn't prepared or equipped to take care of those children. And so there's so many varying situations, and I love hearing everybody's different stories. You have gotten some dickheads on this live today. Who?
I agree. I don't
Disney.
understand the animosity towards this subject. I mean, you'd think people would be interested in. That's the thing about today's age. There is especially in America, there's not enough emphasis on child safety. No,
Yeah.
it's almost like it's been thrown out the window. We're trying to the state is trying to get these kids to take accountability, to be accountable when they have no business to be accountable.
Yeah.
They're not
And
ready.
they
I
shouldn't
mean,
have to be accountable for the faults of the adults in their lives.
I don't. I think. I do think people are when they're 16, 17. I think they should be held accountable for their actions on certain things. But I mean, beyond that, most things, children are not ready. In fact, I really think that we should raise the voting age. But that's just me. It used to be 21. Now it's not. But I mean, now it's 18. But it should be back to 21. Hell, I think it should be 25 because I think we have some really nonsensical laws being passed that do not protect our children. It's getting ridiculous. Sorry, I went on a
No,
rampage.
it's
No,
okay.
no, you're 100% right. I wanted to add to that because children, especially teenagers who work, pay taxes. And so when you're 16 and 17 years old, you pay taxes, and taxation cannot happen without representation. And people who cannot vote should not have to pay taxes. Like, that's just crazy to me that that happens. And so I have this whole like shtick about taxation without representation, specifically when it comes to minors.
And also,
I agree. I don't think we should have to even be considered to pay taxes until we're 25, because by that time if you're going to college, you've already got your degree, you've done everything right, you're going into an entry level position, and at that time, by the time you're 25, if you've done everything right, and you choose to pay taxes, because mind you, paying taxes is supposed to be voluntary. And if you choose to pay it, then that's fine. You're set then. Or you don't make enough, and you shouldn't qualify. You shouldn't have to be forced to pay taxes anyways.
well, I don't think there should be child credit back on adoptions and foster care. Just my opinion.
I agree.
So there's that. Like,
Yep. Because they're already getting funded by taxes in the adoption
right,
system.
like, well, especially
So I
foster
agree.
care, but like
I would say
adoption.
yes and no, because I think that if there are going to be tax credits, a certain percentage of that money should be put away for the child, and it should be like included in whatever contract, foster care, or adoption that is signed. Where if
That's
you are
I
going
would
to
go.
receive that tax credit,
Yeah, I
but
could go
like
with that. But
we,
otherwise, no. I
yeah.
agree.
But like there's business at like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and like big name companies give $5,000-$10,000 to adoption. Some of them are now doing
hmm
IVF, surrogacy now, and so like it just, I don't know, like it just does not sit right with me. Like, you're just putting money into, I get it, like people want families, but you're
your
ripping
want
families
for a
apart.
yeah, your want for a family does not supersede the needs of the child.
Like, we don't have like Olivia was saying, she had to go through, you both had to go through like hell to look for family, right? It's the same thing that I had to go through. And we don't get the same information, right? Like, we have to do our DNA tests. Like, the amount of testing I've had to do and still have to do to solve issues is ridiculous, right? We don't have a good healthcare system to begin with, but to not have that information is dangerous,
Yeah.
because this doesn't just affect me, this now affects my child.
Yep. And that was the big one for me because yesterday one of my neighbors literally was like, Rihanna, you've spent so much time looking for everybody else. Who looked for you? And I was like, ooh, shut up. I owe you $40, right? And like,
Uh,
thank you for that therapy. Appreciate that. But if I hadn't have done that, I would have never known that my daughter has the BRCA gene on both sides of her family. And that means that she's going to have to start getting mammograms as soon as she grows, right? So it's like she has a much higher risk. And if I hadn't have done that, I couldn't imagine potentially losing my daughter in her late 20s, early 30s to undetected breast cancer because we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that should have never ever happened in
Well,
the first
you
place.
can get tested for that.
I did.
Uh,
I have BRCA one, the first BRCA gene, not the second
you
one.
do. She can also get tested for it. I
Yeah.
did not, but I did have my first mammogram at 30, and they said you don't have to come back till you're 40. So at least that's good. I was like, okay, that sounds good because that
Yeah.
was painful, but did not solve the issue. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's just like it's ridiculous what we go through, and when we say it's unethical, we're not talking about, yeah, there's some adoptees like myself who have a good experience. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the legalities of it, right? Like, if you're paying to buy someone else's child and they're not, it's that alone is human trafficking, right? But they're also losing out rights. Like, you know, we follow Laura High, and she's a sperm donor child, and she talks about how she doesn't have access to information because there's no regulation. So it's a problem.
And I looked into it, and the math didn't add up. But for a while, I was working with her, and we went. She chose what was called. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have heard of Sacred Heart,
Mm-hmm.
a private
Yeah, that sounds really
adoption
familiar.
agency.
Yeah.
Okay, I found out later on they were under investigation. I didn't find that until years later. But she was guaranteed. She in the deal was to get updated at least every few months until the child was 18. That stopped after a year, and now I think it's like Sacred Heart is actually out of business. And I think
It
a few
is.
years
Well,
after that, they investigated them for their practices or something. There was something going on with them.
Yeah.
I don't know if the agency is out of business. I can't say, but I know that
Right.
it's out of a church, and I know the church still exists, or at least it did a few years ago because my mother had to go to a funeral to one, and
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah,
But she got paid like $25,000 for to take care for the whole pregnancy and everything, and then they took her from. They didn't even let her hold the baby when the baby was born. They took her
Yeah.
right out of the room immediately. Um,
this is
and
also
then after a year, neither one of us got any updates or nothing. It's like they
right.
Yeah.
just disappeared.
Well, and that's a problem in the UK too. Like we were talking about how you can adopt from certain countries to the US. Well, we also, I hate to say it like we're products, but that's the truth. We also send children from the United States to other countries to be adopted.
It's funny you say that. I just met an American-born Australian adoptee because I was like, do other countries adopt children from America the way America adopts children from other countries? Like, I just need to know. And so many people came out of the woodwork and was like, I was adopted in America, but we lived in Mexico our whole lives. Like, it was crazy. Yeah, no, it definitely happens. We definitely supply other countries with children too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the really bad thing about that is that that system has been abused so much, especially by like a lot of the kids who end up on the streets. They'd end up getting put into private agencies and adopted overseas, and they would be considered as missing here, and
Mhm.
they'd go overseas and they'd get their all their information changed, and then they would bring them back, and you would never know that they were children that were abducted or sold into as a child bride back to them. I mean, it's amazing. People don't realize that almost 200,000 child brides were known to exist in America between 19 what was it 2019 and 2021.
Mm-hmm.
There was a survey done that 200,000 child brides in
Well,
America.
the children that went missing under, well, I think it was Trump, right?
Yeah, his first, or no, was it? Yeah, it was Trump.
It was Trump. It was. I don't remember the exact years. It was during his first presidency. They're still missing.
Yeah, the 2016, around 2016.
A
Yeah.
lot under Obama too that we're missing.
Yeah. No,
Yep.
I'm not saying.
Yeah, so it's been going on for quite a while.
But I remember it was like a very large number. It was like 130,000 children just disappeared, and we still don't know. And I know someone just wrote Biden. Yeah, Biden did do it. You're right. We've heard that they have been reconnecting with their biological families. Some of them. I would love to have updates on that. But yeah, I think both. Like I was saying before, you might be new into the live. Have done a lot of bad things in terms of
Yeah.
adoption and foster care. So, like I said, I heard doesn't mean that it happened. So, yeah, no, I agree with you, Peter, on that.
Yep. A lot of it started under Reagan. I'm old enough to remember Reagan as
Yes.
president, and it was
So happy
terrible
you mentioned
starting there.
Reagan. When he
Yeah.
started offering out foster children and giving people subsidies to adopt them, it changed the foster care industry completely. And I actually have a friend who's an older adoptee, and she was talking about how in the 80s, when she was in the system, like it was much different than what it is today. But also, she was in the system in California, and California is known for its amazing social programs, specifically when it comes to previously incarcerated people, former foster youth, and things like that. And so I think that situation that create our stories.
Yeah.
You
Oh my
broke up for a
gosh.
second. I didn't catch
Yeah.
that last 30 seconds.
Oh, I'm
I saw-
sorry. I was just saying situationally and locationally, it really varies depending on the social programs that exist. In Michigan, we just
That's
don't
true.
have that many.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and
It's not equal among the states, that's for sure.
to Peter, yes, a lot of them do run away. A lot of them are used unethically. A lot of them are trafficked through foster care or adoption. There's not enough checks and checks after the adoption. They do take vulnerable children, especially foster youth or adoptees who do run away and try, the homeless. So you're not wrong because they manipulate and they say, well, there's nobody looking for you and stuff, and that's how a lot of bad things happen. So
That's what
I don't know if
happened.
you guys remember what I wrote under the foster care system, and I don't know how well this has been addressed, but how many of these foster care families, I know back in the 80s and 90s, so many of them were getting funding to take care of these children, and they weren't even living in the home. They were
Yeah, that happened with
runaways,
me.
or they were, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I hope they fix that, because that's just wrong too.
well, they're supposed to go check on them, but the CPS in most areas, right, are overworked, right? They don't have enough workers. They're not trained well to deal with all of this. My son's therapist was a former CPS worker. And she talked about a case, like she didn't give too many details, but she said, I left because there was a case where her boss wanted to remove the child and it wasn't necessary. Like the child was fine. They just needed some resources. But the boss overrode her, went to court, and the child was removed.
Mm-hmm.
So there's also those cases.
Hello?
Hi.
So, I don't disagree with you, but what are your solutions?
So,
Can
okay. Yeah, go ahead, Olivia.
I was going to say, so a lot of times that question comes off really disingenuous, and I'm going to explain why. Because there is no one size fits all for every single child. And so what we really have to do is reform the system enough until the current systems of foster care and adoption do not look like what they looked like 10 years ago. 15 years ago. There needs to be a federal oversight. There needs to be an overhaul of the entire system and how we view children. And America innately has always viewed children as second-class citizens.
Okay, so it would be nice if you would ask clarifying questions before you would say things like "this is disingenuous,"
No, I said
because I'm here.
it always comes off disingenuous because
Right.
asking that question means that you haven't actually thought about what we're talking about.
No, in this
And that,
context, it means I'm asking you to understand. So let's treat it like that, please.
okay, well, firstly, I want to say I'm not being rude to you in any capacity. This is not the first time, nor will it be the last time I have been asked that question. And so when you are coming to somebody asking them a question, they're saying, "Hey, like actually, this question that you're asking comes off very disingenuous." It's like, okay, that's not my fault,
Yeah.
but like
That's
the
why I
energy.
said ask questions, don't make assumptions. But I understand where you're coming from, why you're making these, but it's not disingenuous in this context. I don't know enough about it.
So I'm gonna say this, that the adoptees that do advocate, all of us have at least one video on our platforms that talk about this. And they're usually pinned, but I will cover it just because we hear it all the time, and I talked about it earlier in the live, and you probably weren't here, and that's okay. So, as Olivia was saying, that all of it needs reform, right? And it is very nuanced. So, if and when a child cannot stay with their biological family, and resources should be allocated for them first, right? Unfortunately, that's not always the case. We get that. The first goal, according to the United Nations, would be kinship. So, grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, siblings, if they're old enough. If that cannot happen, then it would be fictive kin, which Olivia was talking about earlier, where that's not really recognized in the US, but that would look like a family friend or things like ICWA, the Indigenous Children's Welfare Act, where the child can remain with their culture. Okay. And then lastly, for everyone else still listening, would be guardianship.
Yeah, he didn't want an answer. That's what I meant. Like you could, because you're sitting here giving him an answer, and then M is in there asking for a solution, being disingenuous is wild. No, you're not asking for a solution. What you're saying is, okay, well, you have this problem. How have you tried to solve it? And it's like, first of all, we're facilitating these conversations. We are all actively doing work in much different ways. He did not want a solution. He just wanted to be a dickhead.
Yeah, you gave a solution. I mean, and I
was
did
giving
too.
it
I think more federal oversight in the individual actions of the states when it
Right.
comes to
I
adoption.
literally said federal overhaul, complete reform of the system. The system shouldn't look like it
Yep.
does today. And so, and he was like, like I said, it's just the energy is off. I don't know. She is getting the scrounges of TikTok today.
Right. What I was saying was, lastly, would be guardianship, which again, different types. It gets complicated and nuanced, but all of it still needs reform. All of it still needs trauma-informed resources and check-ins. So those are some big things. Like, we should be able to access our vital information, because this is stuff that we need to talk about.
Can I sway the conversation? Adoption related, but just slightly to the left a little bit.
Sure.
So I don't think people realize how much they have been sold adoption propaganda in everyday life. So even when you look at just about any let's do something really basic, any Marvel or DC character, right? So many of those have that adoption trope or that orphan trope. And I mean it's throughout almost every comic book character. And it's not all of them, obviously, but there's
Did you watch Loki?
I did.
Okay, so it was season 1, episode 3, I think. Anyway,
I'm
there
not
was a
arguing with someone
conversation.
whose name is morality is subjective. Like you could kiss my ass and that's just that. Like I'm sorry, go ahead.
Olivia's also very okay, I'm not gonna go off. I'm just tired. I'm just tired. But so in the clip, it's Loki and his multiverse, I forget
Yeah.
her name, and they're sitting down and obviously they're both adopted. But the difference was that Loki wasn't told he was adopted until well into his adulthood,
Mm-hmm.
and there wasn't therapy, there was nothing, right? Whereas his
Yeah.
counterpart, which this is why I love this conversation. Like, I'm not a huge Loki fan, but this was on point. His counterpart, she always knew. She had these conversations. She had the resources as an adoptee. And this is in Marvel. Now, I want to make it known, because I'm a big Disney Marvel person, Stan Lee almost adopted.
Mm-hmm.
And when he found out how traumatizing it was and how problematic it was, which, by the way, Walt Disney was also an adoptive parent, he decided not to adopt. So
That guy.
yeah,
Um,
okay, we get it. You don't like Olivia.
yeah, join the bandwagon. There's a line of people that
Yeah,
don't like me.
Lost Spirit. We never. Oh, hold on.
I apologize.
Lost Spirit. We never said that nobody had their own personal experiences with this. We actually did. We're talking about the legalities side of it, because I was very, very lucky to end up with trauma-informed parents, whereas most don't.
Yeah. I literally just asked my adoptive
Rowdy
mom.
wants to come up. You want to discuss it with him?
You know,
I don't think
personally,
there's
I
any.
think we should ban adoption from foreign countries. You know, I think in America they should always pick American children first. We
Well,
should
and
not.
even
We have, you know, I don't
and
agree
even
with
that
that.
requiring if people are going to adopt from other countries, requiring those people to live in those countries for at least 6 months out of the year for 5 years, right? And so making sure that those children that are adopted from other countries are not ripped away from like everything that they know, everything that's where they are supposed to be. That's where they are born.
Learn their culture, have it
Yeah.
involved. Not like okay, I'm trying not to tell his story, right? You want to
I
come
can
in?
support that quite a bit actually, though, because I work in finance. I've done a
Yeah.
lot of finance for people doing adoptions, and one of them came back to me several times for adopting children in Africa, and then it turned out to be this whole scheme
Mhm.
that was incredibly bad for the kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bear. Hi, Bear.
You remember
America
that
has
one story that was going around about some of these celebrities going over there? I think Oprah Winfrey was one of them, if I remember
No, she
right.
never
That was talking
adopted.
about,
It was Madonna.
right.
It
Yep.
was
Thank you.
Angelina Jolie.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two that I can think of.
yeah.
Off the top of my
Yep.
head.
They would go over there and make
Laura
a big
Ingraham.
scene out of it.
Yeah, and I think that especially when it comes to adopting children from other countries, America has done what America has been known to do, which is displace.
Colonize.
And yeah, colonize and displace, colonize and displace. And so when we're talking about children, we really, really have to think about what it is. And again, I really like to emphasize the point that a lot of times we are talking about Western adoption because adoption in somewhere like a very remote part of Ghana, right, is going to look much, much different than adoption in America. And I'd like to say that we really need to look to Australia, not for many things, but for how they handle child welfare. Again, not perfect,
They've
but
been doing a lot better. Yeah.
they center the child so much, and there's so much that the child does not lose. Even when we look at the process of private infant adoption, it violates what is it, 15 of the 30 human rights violations, but also they violate the Hague Convention repeatedly. If you look at Haiti, a lot of those children were adopted through Haiti because of war or because of natural disaster. That's a direct violation of the Hague Convention.
South Korea specifically, like they actually, during the Korean War, right? Even though, so there was adoptions, right, where there was no biological relation. And then they also made the soldiers who came back legally adopt their children to be able to bring them to America.
Yeah.
So it gets very complicated. And like, that's not the only thing, right? But like when the Ukrainian-Russian war started, right? People were like, oh, let's just adopt the Ukrainian children. And it's like, that's not going to solve the issue, right? We don't want to displace them away from their biological family. We want to stop the war.
Yeah.
That's not gonna, and like, it gets even more complicated because Russia is keeping a lot of children and now adopting the Ukrainian children to Russian families. So it's just frustrating to say the least.
Systematic indoctrination and I want to use ethnic cleansing, basically.
Yeah,
That's the right term.
it definitely is. I think one of my biggest pet peeves is when people say adoption isn't political. When it like, so I've been doing research since I've joined this app, and I've been writing about like adoption at its earliest inception. Right? We're not talking about the 40s and 50s. We're not talking about the orphan trains. We're going back to Mesopotamia. And so there is, and you guys are more than welcome to look this up yourselves, but there's something called Hammurabi's Code.
Mm-hmm.
And Hammurabi's Code has, I think, 15 different laws or rules in place for people who have to take in other people's children. And then you fast forward and you look at how children were used as heirs for heirless people. And so adoption has always been innately political, but we have privatized it so much that it really just has become a way of treating children like a product
Yeah.
versus like actual human beings who deserve some type of autonomy, right?
I would certainly agree, because when I mentioned those loans earlier,
yeah.
they were no less than 50 grand a pop.
Yeah.
I want to answer a last question. I know they're another adoptee. They asked, "Are you okay with people being adopted as long as it's ethical from other countries?" No, I'm not okay. Okay, so there's no ethical way to adopt. Period. I think that there's ways to be more trauma informed. Overall, I don't think it's right, but I think there needs to be a huge rehaul in the system. If it's an adult adoption, I think it's completely fine because it's too I can't speak. It's a consenting adult. But overall, no, because that adoptee cannot access. We already have issues here where we cannot access information. It only gets worse when you're international.
Yeah, and we should not be dragging international adoptees, and like we should not be dragging people from other countries into our shit show when we can't even get our shit show together for our children. But I hate to be, and I don't want to say pro adoption, but when I look at an adoption like mine, right? I was adopted from foster
Mike
parents.
Wazowski.
Okay, bye.
So when you look at an adoption like mine, I was placed into care at 8, adopted within 3, almost 4 years of that, because my mom's rights were terminated. There was no other option for me. So I look at some of these questions where it's like, what do we do with the unwanted children as an unwanted child? And I'm like, that was me. But no child deserves to have a complete loss of everything that they deserve to know because of being unwanted.
So
And so I.
So that's part of what informed my inquiry earlier, is that it's a complicated issue, and I don't know where I stand on some of it. It seems like I'm more aligned with y'all on pretty much everything, but you know, my not to be too anecdotal, my little brother has a wife and they have a kid together, and she's had 3 kids permanently removed because of their pharmaceutical issues in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm faced
How
with
was
a
she able to
situation
keep that last one?
Yeah, she shouldn't be able to.
My brother and I have spent a lot of time on that. I wrote letters of recommendation. They basically did the whole, meth thing for 10 years and then turned their lives around, blah, 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 and worked really hard to get to a very stable point, both of them. But if it falls, I'm the one who picks up, the kid. It's already been settled and all that kind of stuff. So I would be adopting her at that point. Not that, but that's familial. So I assume that y'all are more pro to that.
Yeah, familial would be the first one. I'm sorry, I was laughing at what Rose and Cajun said. So Juan, so first of all, there's not a whole lot of babies that are in foster care. It rarely happens, and when it does, it's usually because they use the crystal ball method, or as Morality was saying, there was a prior case and they take the child away. So that's number one. We're mainly, Olivia's foster to adopt. Rose, you're private infant adoption? I think Rose is private.
Yeah, a private infant. I spent like 3 weeks in foster care, but I wasn't like
Got it.
removed.
And then I was private infant. So it does happen, but rarely. Usually, first and foremost, resources should be allocated to help the families stay together and to get clean and trauma and resources. When that's not possible, we were talking about kinship. So a family member, when that can't happen, a family friend or like with someone within the culture like ICWA, and lastly guardianship. But all of these alternatives need reform. All of the guardians, parent, whatever you want to call them, need to be trauma informed, need to have the resources, and need to put the child first.
Yeah.
I guess I don't understand enough about the current systems to understand where those reforms would be, needed. Where the line is, where it is, and all that. But you said you had some pinned videos.
I should. If I don't, I know.
I thought you deleted all your adoption videos.
No, I had redone them though.
Oh, okay.
If they're not here, they're on Adoptee Healing and Resources. So I have 2 pages. You can go to either. It should be pinned there.
Can I be honest with you? I did not know that that was your account. I just be reposted it every time I see it.
I haven't been on there as well. I got
my
locked out of the
goodness.
first one.
I think that in order to overhaul or reform the system, we need to look at all of the sections that overlap the most, right? So we're looking at medical records. We're looking at whether it's private infant adoption, foster care, kinship, guardianship, it doesn't matter. They should retain rights to their biological families. That should never change to begin with because you don't need to change that in order to take care of a child. And I really explained to people that I think that a lot of the and that's what I brought up, that adoption propaganda with Marvel, but with things like Matilda, with Annie, with so many different just adoption tropes within things. Even if you look at something like all dogs go to heaven, right? You don't innately think that that is an adoption trope, but that little girl did not have parents. Like, she didn't have a family. And so for so long we have been taught that adoption is just this beautiful, wonderful, amazing thing, but nobody really ever talked about the cons. And even within the community of different adoptees, there's varying opinions on what solutions should be. But I genuinely believe you start with the ones that overlap the most: medical records, birth certificates, sibling and family connections, and then you can trickle down and adjust as needed. But until we look at that overlap between all of us, it's not actually going to be a reform.
Hey, Joseph, you want to come up and tell me where it says to let the children rot? Because that's not what I said at all.
I mean, I'm telling you, toss them in that damn lake.
Well, I got to drop down, but
okay.
Thank you for the education and information. Yeah, and yeah,
absolutely.
Sorry, I asked a question that triggered Olivia, and I hope you all do well.
All right, thank you.
Anyway, the question Cajun Mom and Rhodes he asked was, what was the question? I don't know. It was one of those.
It was, what were the alternatives?
Yeah, one of those very disingenuous questions.
Hold on, before I let you up, Michael, just give me a second. Some of us make dark humor jokes about it, but that's not what this is. No, we're not saying for children to stay in the system. If you stay long enough, you will hear us say, here are things to rehaul, right? Here are things that we need reform. Centering the child, centering our rights. That is what we're talking about. We're talking about legalities. If, in my opinion, if all adoptive parents were trauma informed, had open adoptions, went through therapy, allowed us access, centered our feelings, because yes, not every adoptee wants to have that open adoption or have that reunion, listen to the adoptee, then it would be a little bit more ethical. And I say a little bit. If we had access to information, like our medical information, access to our original birth certificates, which only 12 states are fully open, that would be ethical. Like, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, but Olivia is starting out. I think we should even go further back than what Olivia's saying. Education on, it's not in school anymore. With the people that are giving birth, it's just not educated like it used to be.
Yeah.
And it would, I don't know how much it would prevent, but there would be more options. And Joseph, people don't just dump babies. Rose was dropped on her head, but that's something completely different.
Poor Rose. Rose was dropped in with the chickens.
Yeah, her and Howard. I love Howard. He's so cool.
Okay, I want to address Joseph real quick. Okay, most of the children that you're talking about stay in the system. There are multiple types of adoption. You have private infant adoption, you have foster care adoption. Most infants are not adopted from foster care.
That's what I said. They refuse to
That's
listen.
not the same. It's not the same thing. And it's like you're saying, "Oh, let them stay in the system." And it's like, as somebody who adoption was my only choice, the system and my adoptive mom gave me the option, but I knew what that meant. I knew that choosing not to be adopted meant being separated from my sister, being placed in another home. And so people are, again, which is why all of these questions are so disingenuous, because most of these people are not looking at this conversation past surface level.
Correct.
That's it. And most of these people don't, it doesn't even seem like they provide any type of care for children. I don't know.
Just because you're private infant adoptee does not mean you don't end up in the system or back in the system. So
that part,
like, I'm tired of.
Well, like home studies are really, really hard to pass. I mean, they go to your house a day and a half and they write pictures of what the nursery and your yard and your house looks like. And
it's like
hey,
3 hours.
You're good.
It's not even a day and a half.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
I've heard stories.
It's not vetting people. How can you know if someone is going to be? Money doesn't matter. Poor people make good parents. I mean, that's not a thing. But how do you know someone in 2 days is going to be a good parent and what their intentions are with that child? Like the slavery we had with those other babies. That's not enough time to vet somebody. It's just not.
No.
And
Joseph, I was never in the system, and if I hadn't been adopted, I would have stayed with my biological mother. So, no, you're wrong.
Well, Jimbo and Joseph seem not to understand. It goes back to resources for the mother. If they can keep their family and get them on their feet, help them. Why are we helping people to change their, to give away up their rights and change their life, change so many people's life? We need to start way back. All of these are adoptees except me that I'm aware of. I don't know who
Michael, are you
is,
an adoptee?
No, but my mom is.
Okay.
So it's just something that we all need to work on, and it's horrible on everyone involved. I know as a birth mother, I was lied to horribly, but they took advantage of my youth. And now as an adult, I'm pissed. I want to know what made them think that. No, we don't dismiss all success stories. What kind of fucking question is that?
Joseph, what makes it a success story?
Well, and even then, okay, and I'm using air quotes, bad adoptions don't cancel out good adoptions, and good adoptions don't cancel out bad adoptions. Both stories are valid. We need to hear how parents were successful, how they were trauma informed, what they did to keep children connected with their cultures and their families. But we also need to hear how adoption and foster care has failed the children.
How has it failed them?
Hold on, no. First of all, I asked what made it a success story. I didn't say that there weren't success stories. I said what made it a success story. Because only the adoptee can say they had a good experience. I had a good experience. I have trauma-informed adoptive parents. My adoption was open till I was 7-ish, right? And that was at the fault of my birth mom. That's complicated. My birth mother was adopted. Not adopted, sorry. My birth mom was trauma-informed. I have all of the pictures and stuff. I don't have updated medical records, right? I don't have access to my culture per se, right? I don't have contact with majority of my biological family. I don't have memories.
Can I just say something real quick?
Sure.
Because like I have people in my family that are adopted, and they can use like outside third parties to like see who their family was and things like that, and get in contact with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like state offered biological testing to like find your parents and stuff like that.
What
So
state? Because I've never heard that.
I can't hear him hardly.
I'm in New York, and I know that you can do it here, but I'm not sure. I mean, you can get like 23andMe and stuff like that. You can find out who your father and mother are and things like that if you don't already know.
So,
But the thing is, why should anybody have to pay for information that the state was responsible for collecting for them? If the state removed a child, specifically speaking about foster care, then that state had that duty to make sure that that child was informed. Why should I have to pay $230 for 23andMe, which is quite literally they're filing bankruptcy, and
Oh,
they're not even going to exist anymore.
I'm saying
Why?
like any company like that.
No, that it should be the state's responsibility. The children
And isn't it the parents' responsibility though to make sure that
it's
they
both. It's
because
both.
like
Parents.
it's sometimes like for example, there are scenarios where the state wouldn't even be able to figure it out. Like if the father is like a scumbag criminal or something, and he runs states or something like that, there's no reasonable way for the state to get a hold of that information. It's understandable that they would not be able to track something like that. You know what I mean?
So I'm
It's
also
unethical from the start, though. I mean, they're asking that
How?
they lose 15 of their 30 rights. And if you've never seen a child suffer maternal separation, you need to. It's
Oh,
horrible.
yeah, I'm just saying, like, if the case scenario here for most people that get adopted is they lose their parents, whether that be
Right.
through, passing away, or they don't
Right.
they can't take care of them or whatever.
Right, Michael, I was
Sometimes
really
that's
talking to
not.
Joseph. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, respond to you. I was responding to those two Jays playing footsies in here, Jimbo and whatever his name is. We have answers, Jimbo. You need to clean your ears out, shut the fuck up, and listen. How's that?
Well, what answers?
So, okay, hold on. The alternatives, right? Because apparently everyone is coming in now. The alternatives all need reform. Gonna say this again. The first and foremost thing is resources to the families. If and when a child still needs to be removed, right? Because we know that unfortunately still happens. Then the alternatives would be kinship, so biological family, like an aunt and uncle or a brother or sister that are old enough, grandparents. The second thing would be fictive kin, which would be a family friend or think like ICWA, the Indigenous Children's Welfare Act. So someone that is of their culture, right? Which
There's
is
an issue with that, though.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there aren't issues. This is why I said there still needs to be reform, right? And then lastly would be guardianship, because that gets very, very complicated, and it's not always recognized in every situation, especially through foster care. So that those are the alternatives that the United Nations recognizes should be towards adoption, right?
That's still basically adoption, though.
It's safe external care. It's not adoption. Adoption is a legal process.
Yeah, but they're legally being, transferred from their guardianship to another
Right, but
person.
what we're saying is that it's a different legal process, and the child.
That's just splitting hairs, honestly.
It's really not, because
But this is also coming from someone who has, like, his mother was adopted. So we can't, if you don't fundamentally understand how these systems have harmed us, coming in hot and kind of being
That's a
disrespectful.
personal experience, though.
it's not your experience.
Yeah, it's not your
Also,
experience.
sorry, hold on, Olivia. Also, it is
That's
not
the most
same.
exercise you've done today. Is it unethical?
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, immediately, no.
Okay, anyway, it is not the same. There are different forms of safe external care, which is what I was going to say. And there is those that have guardianship, right? have access to vital records that we do not as adoptees. It is up to the guardian that has to do better.
Okay, so I'm going to answer this question because this person's posted it several times. Are you against adoption into the child's family, the child's own kin family? So kinship adoption does have its own set of issues, right? Kinship is what would be considered the number one choice, right? If it is safe for the child to do so, but it also causes a lot of division within the families. And so I think that addressing the issues that exist within the adoption industry, specifically kinship, it's a whole totally separate conversation. Sorry, 1 second.
It says adoption for those that can't read.
What do you mean by unethical?
Are you
legality? Like, do you not know what the word unethical means?
Nope, that's why I asked, because everyone has their different opinion. You don't have to get so defensive and angry. Holy shit. What does it mean to you?
Holy shit, maybe learn the fucking definition, dude, before you're coming up. Dumbasses, seriously.
I understand what the word unethical means.
Yeah,
They lose 15 to 30% of their
you
rights.
understand.
I think that we have repeated ourselves. I think one of the
I
issues.
am tired. I am seriously tired. Michael, shut the fuck up.
One of the issues here is that people aren't, like, again, willing to have this conversation past certain
Michael,
level.
shut the fuck up. He needs to go.
I'm gonna do. No, unethical means it is. Oh my god, I'm tired. Like, if you're
I think
going to
unethical could simply be defined as not right.
Exactly, it's so simple.
Right?
Yeah,
100%.
So what I was gonna say was, if you're
Not
gonna argue the
complicated.
definition, know the definition. Not to you, sorry, Havoc. I'm so sorry. That's just like, it's like, if you know what the word means, then
Oh, yeah.
like frustrating.
No, if
Cody
you get
is
your niece
saying-
and nephew because your sister can't take care of them, then you are giving them safe external care. That's not the same thing. Taking a child into your home and caring for it is not the same thing as adoption. Again, fundamentally, people do not understand this. I blame all the Matildas and the Supermans of the world. This is all Marvel and DC's fault. Like, I just...
Nobody is saying that a child doesn't deserve a family. What we're saying is that a child still needs access to specific information, right? If and when a child needs to be removed from their home, right? And I say if and when, because yes, unfortunately, those situations happen, they should not be losing their rights. Access to our original birth certificate. There are only 12 states where we can access our original birth certificate. Only 12.
And there's some states where you can't access it, or at least at one point. I think it's been ratified, but at one point you couldn't access your records for 99 years due to what Georgia Tan did.
It's still that way. Yes. All right, Havoc, go ahead, and then Bun.
So I have a quick question.
Hello? Hold on, we're gonna.
So when you
go
say
first.
adoption's unethical, based on the
Oh, you're going out there.
sorry, I missed what you spoke.
Hello?
Adoption's ethical, and then I read the prompt below. It's the first part, but in the second part I have a problem with. So I'm like, is deeming legal adoption or adoption in general? Yes.
When we mean, so there's different forms of adoption, right? So adoption is a legal process. There are different, there's other safe external care options, which we've kind of covered, right? Or we've covered several times. I don't know if you were in here. Adoption as a legal process, as adoptees, we lose 15 of our 30 human rights. So yes, majority of adoptees cannot access their original birth certificate The original, not the one that they had from adoption, right? It gets
reissued by the certifying state. Can
thank
I
you.
tell people about the shit show that my birth certificate is?
Go for
Just
it.
briefly. My birth certificate says that it's a Michigan issued birth
Yeah,
certificate,
definitely.
that it was issued in 2004, even though I was born in 1991. I was born in Las Vegas, but it's a Michigan issued birth certificate. And it says that my mom is a 53-year-old Black woman. I have lost jobs because they thought my birth certificate was fraudulent. I have had issues with my Social Security because of it. I am still at 33 years old dealing with the ramifications of having my last name and my birth certificate changed. And I had no idea any of that could happen.
Wow. I was not expecting that when I jumped into the conversation.
Yeah, no, and so there's a lot of legal. My Social
And
Security
I'm
account has said that I am retired since I was 21 years old, and nobody can figure out what happened other than the fact that I fixed my legal last name properly when I was 21. So for whatever reason, I was entered into the Social Security administration system as retired, and we can't figure out how to fix it.
damn.
Yeah.
But
Why is
Jimbo, they're
stuff
not
like this
always
so
proved.
hard? Especially on a topic like this.
So, you might not
I
have
mean,
heard
I'm gonna
the.
be honest. I was coming into. No, you're
Go
for it. My
ahead.
bad.
Go ahead. You're gonna troll, weren't you?
No, I didn't mean to cut anyone off. No,
No, go
not
ahead.
even a
Say what
little
you were
bit.
gonna say.
Like that's why I'm like, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say when I initially read the prompt, I was gonna come in defense of adoption because I was adopted and I adopted my son. I was not aware that these things existed, and I don't understand why they would. That is terribly wrong to me.
Yeah. So, our birth certificates get reissued, as Olivia was saying, right? So, my original, I happen to have a copy of my original. I happen to have been born in a state where I can access my original, but and plus my adoptive parents kept a copy. So I had no name. So it was baby girl, my birth mother's last name, and then it only has her, and the time that I was born, where I was born, yada yada yada. So it was reissued, I should say, to say my now name, right? My adoptive parents. In some places, like Olivia was saying, your birth date gets changed. The place that you were born gets changed. There's more, right? Like Natalia Grace is a great example where they had it reissued, so she was much older than she actually was.
Yeah.
So
That's cruel.
Right. So in the case of adoption, it shouldn't be that they're changing our birth certificates. It should be a certification of adoption instead.
Yeah.
Right? There are those that
1000%.
you know, that still have issues with their IDs and their passports because, like, if you were internationally born, right, you have to apply for citizenship.
Yep. We're terrified. We have people in this community that are not sure if they are going to be deported with the new laws. I am struggling to even get my passport because of how my birth certificate looks and because of the fact that I can't access my original birth certificate. And so, once again, I don't think people understand the ramifications for what adoption does to us legally. And I know a lot of people miss this conversation, right? Because we've been on here a while, but there are so many different things that happen to us individually. I didn't know until I had issues with my birth certificate that Las Vegas birth certificates are one of the most forged birth certificates in America. And that's one of the reasons why I was having issues with my birth certificate.
Yeah. So there's 19 states that are fully
Would not have guessed.
closed. There's 19 states that are half open where you need a court order to open it, and it takes one person, and it's usually the adoptive parent, to keep it closed. And then there's 12 states where it's fully open, but again, those birth certificates are no longer valid. Okay, hold on. Before we go on, Joseph, it's not that we don't care about infertile women, right?
That's not the
Infertility
conversation.
is a medical disability, as
Children are
deemed by
not
the
medical
ADA.
devices.
We are not fucking band-aids. Okay? We're not going to issue that. We're talking about adoption. We're focusing on being adoptee focused.
Yeah.
We're not
Infertile
putting...
or infertile, nobody is owed a child. No one on this earth is owed a child.
Thank you.
And children are not medical devices. You can't just go put in a prescription for a newborn baby. Like, that's crazy to me.
All right, sorry. Haley, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I kind of wanted quick clarification before I say anything on this topic.
Sure.
Because I also am adopted. Adoptees lose... Adoption isn't
15
child-centered.
over 30 rights.
Okay. In what aspect do adoptees lose 52 out of 30 of their rights?
So, according to the United Nations, the Declaration of Human Rights, adoption,
the legal process.
Yeah, the legal process of adoption, right? In the U.S. specifically, violates 15 of our 30 human rights. So we were just talking about birth certificates, right? That's one violation.
So that I agree with. I also agree that adoption is not child-centered. However, I do believe that adoption is a necessary thing, and it can be a good thing if it was done better than it is in the U.S. right now.
Yeah, oh, go ahead. I apologize.
I was gonna say,
no, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was going to say yes and no. So we're talking about the legal process of adoption, right? And then yes, I agree. It needs to be, we want it to be reformed. I don't think it'll ever be gotten rid of, right? We've kind of talked about the alternatives, but I don't think that we need to use the word adoption. Like, we can use the term safe external care.
Yeah. And I think that's the big difference, is that a lot of times people have this preconceived notion that adoption is the act of taking the child into your home, but adoption is the legal process that gives you ownership of that child. Safe external care is what you are offering the child.
Right.
And so, sometimes the verbiage gets confusing.
It's the umbrella term for what adoption, kinship, foster care, guardianship are all under.
Yeah.
Okay, but even if, right, let's say it's not an adopted child, technically, legally speaking, if somebody has a biological child, they technically own that child as per the laws of minors.
No. And I'm going to explain why. The difference is that as adoptees, we cannot be emancipated.
Nope.
Whereas, if you are biologically related, you can be emancipated. Now, that gets more complex because you have to be a certain age, but there are other things that, like, if you're biologically related, you have access to information that we don't, right? There is no price tag, right, for a biological child. Right? The biological child is not being, I'm going to say sold, because that's really what we're doing, based off gender, location, health, religion. What am I missing?
So I actually don't necessarily, because with IVF and surrogacy and the things that people are doing, biological children are actually absolutely being bought and sold. And I have my whole points about surrogacy and IVF and the way people are bioengineering children. But where we are technologically today, I do think biological children are being bought and sold.
Well, and I'm not talking about those particular, like, I'm just talking the generalization of.
Okay.
Yeah, like, yes, because there are different types of IVF and surrogacy as well. Like, there's egg donation, there's sperm donor, there's, yeah. You get the point, right? Like, there's different types. So that also gets a very nuanced conversation. But overall, in general, right? It's
Most
not the
PEP
same.
children are not bought and sold. 100%. I get that.
Yeah.
I agree that children should not have a price tag. However, just to share a little bit of my personal story is that if I hadn't been adopted, I would have been homeless. My parents were drug addicts. I'm pretty sure I was born on the street. So, like, in that case, yeah, adoption saved my life in essence. Granted, could the reform on the adoption thing is something that is necessary, obviously, and it will probably never happen. Do I also agree that children are being bought and sold biologically or adopted? Absolutely.
So I'm not going to talk about your case per se. So in the instance where a parent is not safe, right? I think I don't know if you went through foster care, right? But the goal should be to give parents resources. I'm not going to say it's going to happen all the time where they can get clean or within a certain system.
They were given
time. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that's why I said I don't know, under the guise of safe external care, were you placed in a better situation? Yes. Right? And I think it's great that for some of us, we had a better experience. For some of us, we had, like for my instance, I would never be able to be allowed near my biological father. Right? Just never. I could have been placed with my great-grandparent who had adopted my brother. I could have stayed with my biological mother if she had the support that she needed. Right? There could have been a lot of other things. I got lucky having trauma-informed adoptive parents. And that's the thing. It's out of luck. It's not out of law or mandatory. And I was adopted in 1991, so there was a lot of information, but it wasn't readily accessible like it is now.
I also want to say, Haley, as a person who also, had I have not been adopted, my life would have been much, much different. And my mom had no business parenting any children, let alone 7 children.
Yeah.
I understand, like, sometimes these conversations, especially in the beginning for me, were really hard because it was like, well, I was that unwanted child, right? I was that person that there was no other option for me. I knew that if I chose, because my adoptive mom gave me and my siblings the choice, and she said, this is what's going to happen. If you choose to be adopted, we can either change your last name. We don't have to change your last name. But if you guys choose not to be adopted, then you guys will be separated because her contract was up and my mom's rights had already been terminated. So I think sometimes these conversations for people who had no other options other than adoption are hard, right? Because it's like, well, this saved my life, and in many ways, my adoptive mom did, and in many ways, she got it wrong. And so I think a lot of it is like we understand that while these things may have helped us, they have hurt so many people.
Correct. I mean, again, though, personally, I can only talk about my experience, which has only formed my own opinions.
Yeah.
I'm based on my personal experience and my own opinions of it is that adoption is a necessary thing. It does save lives, but personally, I think that it also helps out poor people.
Well, that's eugenics. That's eugenics.
That is eugenics.
That's eugenics.
It doesn't help poor people, though.
No, it doesn't. It just gives rich people the monopoly over poor people's children, and that's a really, really
delicate
go ahead.
Balance. Joseph, I want to talk about that for a moment. First of all, adoption does not guarantee a safe home. Neither does foster care. So let's start with that. Also, foster youth and adoptees are at the same risk of 8 times more likely to be abused and unalived, 4.25 times more likely to unalive ourselves, 4 times more likely to turn to substance abuses, and there's a lot of other crazy statistics that are extremely alarming for adoptees and former foster youth, which is why it all needs a rehaul, right? Like it's also, just because you're adopted doesn't mean you can't be, yes, we're doing TikTok language, doesn't mean that you can't be put back in the system. There,
Correct.
7 out of 10 adoptees end up rehomed. They get
Yeah.
adopted again, right? So it's very alarming.
We
You
had
know,
we had a man on here earlier who said that they gave his adoptive family a trial year of 1 year, and after that 1 year was up, they said they didn't want him anymore, and they put him back in the system.
actually, so. Joseph, there's quite a few reasons that they give, and you can go state by state. There definitely are situations. Yes, I said we're using TikTok language because I can get bananaed for using certain. Actually, it's not morally wrong. We're talking about the legalities of adoption, not case by case. So
I think we have to create a new background.
yeah, maybe, but so what I was gonna say, what you can go look at my page. I'm tired of yes, so I was saying that yes, there are certain situations where a child can be removed, but there are a lot of situations where they do just remove them from lack of resources, right? Instead of providing those resources, they just remove them, right? I was talking about a situation where my son's therapist was a CPS worker formerly, and the child was removed not because the child was unsafe, but because she wanted to give resources, but because her boss decided that the child needed to be removed and went to court and overrode her, even though she is a trained therapist.
Yeah.
So it's not just those situations. It could be simply, trying to think of what, like, it could be a temporary situation, right? I've had to deal with CPS for a few reasons. My ex had them called on him a few years ago because one of the kids had bruises. It was a misunderstanding. She got a bruise because he grabbed her. She was about to run out the door. And they came to my house because they co-parent. And so they had to check, okay, do you have food in the house? Does your child have a place to sleep? And stuff like that. And they asked me, do you feel like he's unsafe there? No, he's well taken care of. They asked my son privately, do you feel safe there? No, I'm fine. So, and by the way, the little girl is disabled. She has global disability, so she did not tell the whole story. But the teachers had called immediately. So yes, that is the case. And it was unfounded. It wasn't a big deal,
So I actually have full permission to talk about this thing I'm going to talk about because someone in the comments said, I've never seen one case where they took the child because they wanted to. And so I have a friend and I have gone over all of her paperwork with her, right? Because before I spoke on her experience, I wanted to know that she was being honest with me. She has completed all parenting classes. She has completed all required therapy. She has done every single thing they asked her to do. It is in the paperwork that I read, and the state of Nevada is still refusing to release her children.
Mm-hmm.
And her only crime was failure to protect the children, but the father has a mental health issue. And so there was a situation, and the children were removed from both parents for that reason. And even after she moved out of state, they still refused to give her children back. And so, yes, children are absolutely removed because a caseworker is having a bad day. That's absolutely a thing that happens. Humans are humans. People have bad days. Yes, caseworkers who are not culturally competent will remove children that they don't culturally understand the family where they come from. It happens.
Also, it wasn't until the last couple years that Kansas even began providing resources and not sending CPS. And it was actually because of an adoptee here on TikTok who at the time worked at a call center who routed calls, and she made sure that that they instead changed the system so that they weren't just going through foster care for no reason. Prez, you want to talk?
Wait, really quick. How do I leave the live? I'm sorry. I'm also
Oh,
at
you
work.
just hit the X at the top.
Yeah, I got her.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I was just listening for a while because I'm not adopted, and like I've never like met anyone who's been adopted, and so like this is just a really interesting take because like you normally think that adoption's like, oh, you're helping the kids and all this stuff, and I see that your points are more legal based because like obviously like I don't think that like everyone deserves children, obviously. Like it's or not like everyone is deserving of children, but every child is deserving of good parents. It's like a whole thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, great.
I was just wondering what you're like, how would you like, not because it obviously needs reformment in America specifically, or maybe everywhere, I don't know. But I don't know what the alternative would be, obviously, because you can't just sit here and tell everyone like, abort your children, like, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like,
Can I
Go
do
for
that
it.
since you've done it like 7 times and
Go
people
for it.
Okay, hey hun, so I'm a foster care adoptee, and so when we're looking at the act of, okay, adoption is unethical, we need to reform the system. We're looking at 3 primary functions that America has. 2 are legal and 1 has questionable legality. So we have issues with all of them, but you have kinship, you have fictive kinship, and you have guardianship. Now, within all 3 of those systems, they still have a lot of issues. There's issues within the family. The children may still have access to unsafe people. Um, and fictive kinship is not legally recognized in most states. And so that would be something more so like a community member, family member, church member, teacher, friend of the family would be fictive kin. And then you have a system like guardianship. And guardianship can be temporary or permanent, but there are a lot of issues within guardianship as well. And so even in my sister's case, her foster mom had legal guardianship of her, and when her mother passed away, she kept all of the survivor's benefits, and my sister didn't know until like last year. And so there's a lot of legalities within all 3 of these systems, but what the hope in these conversations is that we can push people more towards being focused on child-centered care versus children being used as infertility treatment.
yeah, that makes sense. And like I see a lot of people asking where it's like, oh, what do you expect to do with like, the thousands of kids that are already like in the system? And I know you can't sit here and be like, well, if we're just gonna hand them out to every nice person, because like obviously it's not realistic and it's like so unhelpful. But it's like I feel bad for asking because I feel like I sound like backhanded, but it's like one of those things where it's like, what do you expect to do with all the kids? Because it's like,
no, she gets it. I'm about to follow you because you get it. No, you don't sound disingenuous. We had a young man on here earlier. He was like, so what do you do with all the unwanted children? And I'm like, well, this question can come off really disingenuous, but she gets it, right? She did not sound disingenuous, but because she understood that it could come off. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just
That was an argument earlier because someone asked and it came off that way, and yeah.
I just like I'm trying to be like as respectful as possible because like I said, I never been adopted, so I don't want to like be like, what do you guys plan to do and all this stuff.
No,
So
we appreciate that question. I mean, it gets complex with foster care because there are definitely situations, but I always say try to give the parents resources first and foremost. Obviously, unfortunately, there's situations where even then it doesn't happen. Trauma informed, have check-ins, therapy, resources for the foster parents.
yeah, that makes sense because it's like I understand what you're saying. It's not like all these parents would be terrible parents if they just had like options, like.
And so many people deserve those options. There are plenty of people, like I spoke about earlier. My mom, you could have given her $1 million in resources and she still would have made a bad choice.
Yeah.
And so, but so many of these parents would be so much better off with just actual resources. And I see this again with my friend who is dealing with this right now. They never offered her any type of housing, any type of shelter, anything. The only thing they said was court mandated therapy, and she had to pay for parenting classes. And so when you look at the lack of resources for biological parents that are actually trying and they are suffering from poverty, you really start to see the eugenics in it all. And a lot of it boils down to eugenics.
Yeah, because you see all like you have like Angelina Jolie adopting random ass like sorry. You have Angelina Jolie just adopting random Asian babies where it's like, girl, like if you don't go actually help some kids, like
So I'm gonna say this about Angelina Jolie from what I've seen of her adoptions, because I always had the icks from her. From what I've seen of her interacting with her oldest daughter, who's now in college, I think she herself has tried to do good overall. I don't think, yes, there are complexities and we don't know the ins and outs, but she is someone that I'm like, okay, look from afar, I don't really trust her, but like, fine. In terms of like Madonna, because she did it around the same time, absolutely not. Even Sandra Bullock and I'm so sorry, Olivia.
No, don't you do it. You leave Mariska Hargitay's name out of this. She is the only trauma. The work she does, you leave her out of this.
Okay, but so Sandra Bullock and Mariska are iffy for me. They're like they're a little bit more trauma informed.
I agree.
But like both of them, it's still a little bit, yeah.
So I look at, and again, I'm going to go on a little bit of a fangirl because I grew up telling myself that Mariska Hargitay or Olivia Benson was my mom, right? That was my dissociation. And so when I look at her and not only how she has portrayed adoption on the show, but in her everyday life and how she doesn't put her kids at the forefront of any movement, but she still advocates for trauma-informed care, the testing of rape kits. She does so much as an actual activist outside of it. Again, no adoptive parent is perfect, right? Like every human being on this earth has the capability of doing shitty things. But when I look at her, I feel like hopeful, if that makes sense. Like people get it. Sorry, I love her so much.
no, that's so real. Yeah, I also like just wondered. Now I just feel like I'm being like taking up your guys' time because like I said, I don't know anybody who's adopted. But have you ever? I don't know if you guys were all adopted when you were like babies or like younger children. But have you guys ever? Because you hear a lot about how like older teens and stuff don't get adopted.
I was older.
Yeah, no, I just wondered like. I don't want to say like unwanted, but it's like one of those things where I'm like, I wonder how that like. There's like some sort of hierarchy in adoption, I would assume. Like it's just like, how did that make you feel? Like, you know,
you really get it. Like
she understands for not being adopted or in our space. Like,
ooh, I like you.
Thank you. I just want to know because you know, one of those things.
No, so there is I don't want to say a hierarchy, but there does seem to be the potential for a hierarchy in the community. I was an older adoptee. I was placed into care at 8, and I wasn't adopted. That was 2000, and I was adopted 2003, 2004. And so there is it is weird because like, and then I'm a transracial adoptee too. So like that's a whole different layer to things. But there does seem to be a bit of a hierarchy and foster care and how foster care is talked about on this specific app here. We really are the dumpster babies of the adoption community. Caracella knows what I'm talking about. Cajun, Rose, they all know.
You know, that's fair.
There's a lot.
Yeah, no, that was it. I just wanted to know. Thank you. I hope I didn't like
you. Come back anytime.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Caracella.
Hey.
Hey. How's everybody doing?
Oh my god, the amount of people in my oh wait, no. Never mind. I'm good. I thought there was a huge list of in the to bring people up.
Oh goodness.
No, it wasn't. I was just I was reading it wrong for a moment.
No, she has got the scrounges of the TikTok world on this live today. We had like 44 people at one point, and like
I wasn't even paying attention.
It was so bad. The comments, they just kept coming and coming, and I was just like, Jesus Christ. And a lot of it was questions we were trying to ask, but people were hurling questions at us so quickly. I got called a bully again today, so I think I'm just really going to lean into this bully thing. I'm bullying all of you from now on.
It's no longer alleged.
No, it's no longer alleged. It once
Oh,
was
you can
a
change it.
coincidence.
Olivia,
You should
stop bullying me.
you should change it
No.
to confirmed bully.
Listen, have you
Little
taken an
little
edible today?
4'1", 4'1"
Yes, I
bully. Olivia, stop it.
Cajun,
You
how
are
dare you be
bullying
short?
people.
How dare you be short? All of you.
I'm
Well,
gonna stick here
I'm
on
5
you.
foot, but you're just about a foot shorter than me. We're all right.
Oh, I'm
Mine
almost
might
6
comes in
foot.
small packages.
I'm almost 6 foot. Wait, I'm
Who?
5'9". Me.
No, you're not.
I am. I'm 5'9".
Oh, I'm
Hold on.
sorry.
I can turn on my camera for a minute. I've
No,
never
we
done like
need
a
to
full body.
you need to remeasure it. Have someone else measure you.
Hey, NASA.
I don't know if you guys can see
I
me.
thought she was like 4'1".
Can
No,
you
she's
make me
tall.
big?
You
Yeah,
are
hold on.
tall. I don't know how I feel about this.
How do I? There we go.
I don't know if we can still be friends.
Holy mackerel.
I'm short.
Wait, is that the top of the door?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if we can still be friends. You're too tall.
how do I?
How do I turn this off?
I got you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Olivia.
No, I'm always sitting in my videos, right? So people are like the short bitch.
Wait, I'm trying to touch the top of this damn door.
Hold on. Okay, first of
Oh
all,
my
you're
God.
not adopted, so no, you can't say that. And yes, we're talking about the legal process. Second
I
of
had
all,
to quit
daughter,
reading the comments. They
Oh,
were
God.
pissing me off.
daughter of God. First of all, religious trauma, to say the least.
Oh my
And
God.
then your work ethic, your cleanliness, your cooking, your cleaning.
Hold
You
on.
know, none of that makes you a good
No,
parent.
none
by
of
the
that.
way.
No, and having
Thank
a
you.
long-term marriage does not mean that that means you're a good partner. Congratulations on being a good wife.
Or
That
you're in a
doesn't have
Doesn't even
any
DV.
mean you're a
bearing on
good
your
partner.
ability to
Come
be a parent.
on.
You might
Yes,
be in a
religious
DV
trauma.
situation and can't get out. How's that? I mean, come
Have you
on.
been? Hold on, daughter of God. Have you been a parent?
Religious trauma, yes. Raise your hand if you've experienced religious trauma. Hold
What?
on, let me turn my camera on. Like,
I mean, maybe on the Jewish side.
Is that enough hands? And I'm not even
people are
adopting.
like,
I'm talking all crap. I don't know what I'm talking about.
people think that because they feed their kids gluten-free diets that they're good parents. That doesn't make you a good parent. Like,
That makes you.
what?
That's abusive to me. God.
Unless they have celiacs, but still,
You wouldn't know because they don't have a medical history.
man.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. Former Catholic. Yeah, I'm a former Catholic. My mom was a Virgin Mary.
I was raised in a Black Pentecostal church, and if anybody is from the South, they know what I'm talking about.
Uh-huh. I heard
The
it.
Holy Ghost. Rose,
Oh my
let me
God.
be quiet.
So is mine, daughter of God. That doesn't mean I'm gonna adopt.
Yeah, I have 4 amazing children, and
What
that
is
doesn't
she?
mean
Why
that
is
I
she
would
hung
adopt
up on being
children.
a good parent right now?
Popo Juke. Yep.
I think she's
Cajun
trying to
called her
convince
out.
Can I
herself.
ask a question?
It's
So what would you replace adoption with?
first, I'll let your turn.
What would I replace adoption with?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, first, you do understand we're talking about the legal process of adoption. We're not talking the warm, fuzzy feeling that you get when you provide a house to a child.
Sure.
So, I would change the current legal process of adoption, starting with the rewriting of birth certificates. That would no longer be a thing. I would change the legal process by making it legally enforceable to have legally enforced relations with biological family contracts, like whatever that looks like, would be legally enforceable.
You would make it so that the child would always have an ability to reach out to the birth parents?
I would make it so that do you know what open adoption is?
Yes.
Okay. That is not a legally enforceable contract.
Okay.
That would be legally enforceable.
As long as it's safe for the child.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously. Let's see. What other
Okay, so
legal
you would
part
just
of
change adoption.
So it
adoption
would be
is the legal process. So if we're getting rid of adoption, we're getting rid of a legal process. We're not saying we're not having external care for children.
Right, of course, but I mean, so when you say the changing of the when you say changing of the birth certificate, you mean to reassign the parents, correct?
right.
Okay.
That's correct.
So
That's part of it.
okay, so whenever couldn't you change that and still have the legal process of adoption?
It would not be the legal process of adoption that we have if
It
that
would
is
be
a
safe.
fundamental part of it.
So safe external care is the umbrella term. There's different forms of safe external care. Adoption is just one legal process.
So what would the other ones be that you would favor opposed to adoption?
So none of them, because they all need reform.
Right, I can agree with that 100%.
But it gets complicated and nuanced. I would add that, first of all, access to our information, number one. Having trauma-informed parents, having check-ins. What else?
I'd remove adoption subsidies.
That.
Okay, but I think that the adoption subsidies should be reformed too. I think that a percentage in that adoption contract, a percentage of that money has to be squirreled away for the children, like a
Listen,
Coogan
no,
account.
not a percentage. If you're giving any money, that's all going
All
to
of
the
it to the
child.
yeah. Therapy, medical, like a lot of reform.
I can agree with that. I think there definitely needs to be a lot of reform. But do you think removing the legal process of adoption would cause possibly more harm than good?
How?
Because if that is eliminated, then what? So if that's eliminated, we're no longer using that process. Let's say we use foster care instead, but that's also a horrible system. That needs reform.
Foster care and adoption are not the same thing.
I understand that.
And we already said reform it all.
You already get adopted from foster care.
That's definitely not the case.
Did you just say you don't get adopted from foster care?
You do not.
I was adopted from foster care.
Yes, foster care to adoption is a thing.
No. Foster care to adoption is a thing, but not all adopted children were foster care.
I never said that.
Nobody said that.
That's what I was just.
Hey,
that's what I
Charity.
was saying.
Right. But
People shouldn't be adoption from foster care should be such a rare event in the first place. It should be so rare in the first place because you do not need to own a child to take care of that child. And I've taken care of many children in my life. I literally, like, it's so frustrating to me that people don't understand that you can give a child a safe, loving home. You can read them bedtime stories and tuck them in at night and brag about their accomplishments and not own them.
Right, but the problem with that is children are always owned. So if they're not owned by you, they're owned by their original parents.
No.
Okay,
no,
but
no, we're not.
listen.
You want to go on? Sorry.
A lot of things just happened right there, what you just said. First of all, accepting the premise that children are always owned is, I'm going to encourage you to pause for a moment and really think about what you just said there and
I
how
don't own my
dehumanizing
children.
that is.
Yeah, I don't.
Legally, you are.
You do not own. They are not owned.
You cannot own people.
Having
But if
guardianship.
you can't own people, then adoption wouldn't be ownership. That
But
doesn't
there's
make
a
any
difference
sense.
between ownership and responsibility.
Legal contract.
Say that again, Olivia.
There's a difference between ownership and responsibility.
No, I
You
understand
have a
that.
responsibility legally for your children, but you do not own them.
So
How is there a difference in owning a adopted child opposed to a child that you gave birth to?
I'm going to give an example, right? We're not going through, again, Olivia. we're doing the generalization here. As if you are biologically related to your parents, right, you can be emancipated.
Okay.
As adoptees, we cannot.
In what state? That's definitely not.
All of them.
No, that's not the case.
As adoptees, we
You become a
cannot.
ward of the state again. You become a ward of the state. You do not become
Right.
emancipated. That's not the same thing.
No,
Not the
but
same thing.
see, okay, so I'm adopted, but I was internationally adopted. I was never a ward of the state. I was never in foster care, and therefore I would never revert back to being in
Yeah,
foster
you
care.
Yes, you
would
would.
though. Yeah,
You would then become through foster care.
So
you
my
would be
sis- so my sister was actually emancipated. She's also adopted from. We were both adopted from Ethiopia. And when she was 17, she was emancipated, and we
Well,
live in
yeah,
South Carolina. So I don't know if it's a difference in states, but she was
but
never a ward of
17
that.
17 is basically an adult. They didn't do that. They did that out of convenience for themselves because of the paperwork for emancipation, trying to argue that she couldn't take care of herself when at 17 she'll be 18 with literally within 12 months. That was more out of convenience for the state.
Right.
And so even with, like, I was adopted from foster care and placed back into the system. I was a ward of the state. There
So
have
what
been
was the,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
What was the what is the average age of an emancipated child, I guess? Like I would assume it would be between 16, 17.
I believe it's 16, but at 17 when
It depends
even
on
the state.
Yeah, but like the average age across the board, I would say probably 16, 17.
Yeah, it's about 16 is I think the youngest.
But no, because even when I was a part of this, they wouldn't emancipate me.
I said the youngest. I didn't. Yeah, it really depends though. But again, like most, they won't do it for if you're not biologically related.
So emancipation in the U.S. generally starts in most states at the age of 16. There are a few states in which you can do it younger.
I think it's
Emancipation from foster care pretty much doesn't happen. Like you have to age out. So the average age would be somewhere around in between 16, 17.
Right. So I'm a huge supporter of reform within foster care, adoption, all of those. As somebody who has experienced the more nasty sides of it, then there's a lot of them. I can agree with that. My only problem is that I think there is definitely, I don't know, I just think that when you say adoption is unethical, like possibly it could lead people to not adopt children, and I think that can be, I think that can be worse for a child in many cases.
Okay, but so this is my question for you. What part of the legal process of adoption is absolutely necessary and couldn't like we can't exist without that legal process?
So, Olivia was saying that you don't need to quote unquote own a child to put food on the table for them. But that's not my concern. My concern is whenever you take your child to the doctor and they say, "Hey, you don't have any legal right to tell me that you can give my child surgery." That's problematic.
Legal guardianship covers that.
Yeah,
Our
and
government-
guardian ad litem, like the state can make decisions for that child. The state
Our-
can give you permission to make decisions. You don't need to be adopted for that to happen.
Our government actually there's a lot of red tape there. Okay, my mother was a foster mother, and she took in over 250 foster kids, and my mother gave them a lot of bonuses that they wouldn't have had in life. A loving home, 3 meals a day. A lot of those kids saw things that they should have never saw. And I think that a lot of people that have been through the system, okay? If you adopt somebody, I'm not saying that there aren't some weird foster parents out there and there aren't some people that should not be adopting children. Like they adopt them for their own, to heal themselves rather than, adopt them for the love of the child. Okay? I'm not saying that because there are their fair share. But for the most part, when somebody wants to adopt a child, when they want to, be able to love them, a lot of these kids get a chance to be a part of a family, have the same last name. I mean, there's a lot of benefits too.
Okay, so but what apart about the legal process of adoption cannot be achieved through some other means
Well, here in society today, it just doesn't work like that. There's a lot of red tape you have to go through.
So we
Like,
don't change anything. So we don't try to change things to make it better. So
well,
legally,
that's
we
the
should
problem.
always be changing these birth certificates because that is an impossible thing for us to change about adoption. You know, those people have to be on that birth certificate.
Well,
Dan, you said your mother was a foster parent, right?
yeah,
Did she not provide 3 meals a day for you and love you?
yeah, and I was a foster kid, and she adopted me.
Okay. I did not know that, but I'm just
No, that's all
throwing that
right.
out. Do you not think that any person couldn't then also provide 3 meals a day and love the child without going through a legal process that gets rid of our human rights?
Well, the reason why they do that is because of the red tape. Because here in America,
That
parental
didn't answer my
rights.
question.
What's that? What's your question?
Do you think it's possible to provide a loving home and provide 3 meals a day without adoption?
Yeah, that's being a foster parent.
Not always.
No, because
What's
I've
what's so bad
provided.
about adoption?
Okay. Do
That's
you know? Have you read the Declaration of Human Rights?
I know the Declaration of Human Rights. I mean, like,
Okay, we lose 15 out of 30 human rights.
well, I think that the other thing is that when you get adopted, I don't know about you guys, but my adoptive mother was a little goofy and she did some things and all that. I had an amazing adoptive father. And you know the one thing she gave me personally, is Jesus. And you know, going to church and getting, you know, like being part of a family. And when you're a foster child, I don't care how old you are, at least from me and the people I've known, being adopted isn't about gaining a right to somebody. It's about gaining a family and their last name. And, you know, that's what adoption's supposed to do.
But I had
Hey,
a
Olivia, did you like giving up your rights for a different last name?
No, and I knew I didn't
Funny,
even
me
have a
neither.
choice. Yeah, I didn't have a choice. I had to because if not, then the ramifications were worse. So, there's that.
Why,
Um,
why
and
didn't
get
you
and
want them to
adoption.
adopt you, if I could ask?
So it's not that I didn't want them to adopt me. It's that my adoptive mom always made it very clear she was not my mother. And she always made it very clear that she was only adopting us to keep us from being separated. And so there was also a very much so a lack of maternal instinct there when it came to us.
She should
And
have
so
somebody should have intervened, or, you know.
there was nobody. I was a sibling set. I was one of two. And me and my sister were placed into care together. They did not want to allow my adoptive mom to adopt us because she was a black woman. And so for 2 years, they searched for a white family to take both me and my sister, and nobody wanted both of us. There was only one family, and they only wanted me. And so that meant being separated from my sibling. So my grandmother, my adoptive mom, sat us down and explained to us if we chose not to be adopted, we were going to be separated.
Well,
And so while that is a type of love, all adoption does not come with this this ideal family that everybody totes. And it's like, yeah, that's a great idea. But if that child is queer in a religious family, then they might not be accepted the way that they are. If they have behavior issues, oh, there you go, acting just like your birth family. There are so many things and so many insults and so many ways in which I myself was made to understand that even though I was adopted, I was not family.
They should have classes for adopted parents that they have to go through and take, and
They do, and it's not enough.
It's not, well, so first of all, it's not mandated, right? That's
No,
number
I mean,
one.
like, it should be mandated.
But that's what we're talking about, is this is why it needs reform, because it's not child centered. Because we
Right.
do lose rights. We get our birth certificates changed. We don't have if you have access to your birth certificate, right, which only 12 states do, the rest don't. That's one instance. We don't have access to medical information. For those of us who were private infant adoption, right? We were straight out human trafficked to strangers.
Well, I know one thing, that I'm not saying life is perfect or anything, but a lot of us, like if you were adopted and bad things happen, you guys can go out there and change that.
That's
and,
what we're doing.
And make, not only through here, but, go to, Lutheran Family Services, go to these places, make it be known. But, as far as ethics go, I think most kids that do get adopted, whether they want to be or not, I don't think a kid ever knows what's good for them necessarily either. Like my son right now, he's my biological son, and he's 16, and he doesn't like, the fact that I don't let him get away with things, that he has rules, stuff like that. But that's what you have to do sometimes to teach them.
But we're not talking about rules. We're talking about things that are detriment to our bringing up, right? Like medical information, things that can literally kill us. We're talking about genetic mirroring. We're talking about our culture. We're talking about access to information we cannot legally, right, get. If you are a good adoptive parent, you do the very best that you can to get that information. And there are good adoptive parents. I'm not saying that there aren't.
Right.
But we're talking about
There
the
are
legalities
people in our
of it.
community that are good adoptive parents, trauma informed, wonderful, amazing people providing care for children.
Right. And that's what we're talking about. That's why we provide the resources to talk about this, of how to change it. And yes, talking one by one helps. I've seen a huge change, not just on this app, but on others, where people are talking about it and doing better. I'm seeing a change.
Yeah. It just says on the thing, adoption is unethical, not like, sometimes, or, so I guess I figured that, it was not necessarily a disregard for some adoption, but all adoption, But
I mean, I would argue that it is for all adoptions, because it's not talking about the physical care. We're not talking about the act of caring for a child. We are talking about the legal processes, the legal things that happen to you being unethical. Those legal things are how we lose those rights.
Well, yeah, everything.
So that is unethical, and sometimes I feel like it seems that people are conflating the feelings you get and the care you can show by taking care of a child with a legal process. You guys are conflating the two. Nobody's saying that it's wrong to care and love for a child. Nobody's saying it's wrong to take care of children that you may not have biological relations to. What we are saying is that it is completely unethical, the legal process that you force children to go through.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing is that why I brought up the rules is I'm forcing my son to abide by the rules. He doesn't like it. Children do not have rights.
They actually do.
Wow.
No.
Yes.
Yes, they do.
Children do have rights.
Yes, they do.
Well, when I say rights, I mean like they do what they're asked to do. Okay. And
a huge problem with the ideology behind adoption is the fact that people treat children like second-class citizens. And yes, children do have rights. I have 4 children. If my son tells me that he doesn't want to wear a specific shirt because it makes him feel itchy, I'm not just going to make him wear the damn shirt. Like, they are human beings.
That's being taken out of context.
But
I'm saying
hold on.
They have to do what they're told to do.
Hold on.
They have to. Not everything's comfortable in life.
Do you do everything you're told to do? Like, that's crazy to me. As adults, we're told to question everything, but children should just be seen and not heard. It's insane. I have 4 kids. That's insane.
No, I never said that at all.
Last thing for a minute. Rules and rights are very different. Rights, Children got rights in the late 1880s because of the man who started the ASPCA. Yeah, animals had rights before we did as children, before we do as adoptees. My animals have more rights than I do, and they're also adopted.
Well, I actually think the ASPCA, I mean, like, we all have our, you know, I think we have a responsibility to make rules and do things for our kids. And, you know, like a certain, you know, like you said, a certain shirt, would you make your kid wear it? No. But if there are certain, you know, situations and, you know, like that, you know, like for instance, if a child's got some mental illness, or if a child's got some physical illness, or, I mean, there's a lot of things that play into that, you know. But I honestly, I think that I was put in a foster home when I was 15, and these people had no business adopting anybody. Okay. And they were rude to their kids. They made them clean their house and do all sorts of things. And, you know, I personally, always treat my kids with respect, and I let them know why they have to do something and what's going on, and I talk to them and with them. But what I'm saying is you're saying if a child's forced, like I force them to go to school, and I force them to get their homework done, and if they don't do that, then there's consequences behind it. You know, I'm just saying, I think that there are some of the times where they don't want to be away from their biological parents or their mother or father when they get taken away. I get that. But sometimes they're placed with parents that are more steady, and their parents are given a certain amount of time to get their act together. And if they can't, then if it's in the best interest of the child to stay where they're at, then, you know, sometimes that's just the way it is.
Right, but we're not talking about that though. Like, yes, we've said there are times and places, if and when that happens, yes, a child should be removed. We get that. We're not saying that doesn't happen.
We're talking about forcing our kids to be adopted, and I said, you know, like, it's
but that's not the same thing as a human right.
Well, let me ask you a question. Why does it matter whether if they're adopted or they just stay with that family the whole time?
Because then they have legal access, like there's legal ramifications for adoption. And I don't think you were here for this part of the conversation, but I quite literally have had to dig myself out of a hole of fraud because of how my last name was changed and the fact that I was adopted in a state other than the one I was born in. And I didn't do anything. I had 2 names, I had 1 social security number. My social security profile quite literally says retired, and I've been retired since I was 21. Nobody knows how to fix it. And so there's so many legal ramifications. There's no way that I would take a child into my home and say that I would adopt it. I've taken so many children into my home.
Well, what about?
And at no point would I adopt those children. I would take care of those child, feed those children, make all medical decisions for that child, all things I could do without having to force that child to now belong to me.
Actually, a lot of those things, the state makes sure when you're a ward of the state says what you can and can't do.
Well, it depends on the type of placement. So if you have a non-kinship or guardianship placement, and yeah, the state makes decisions on the child's behalf more so than they used to. But there were plenty of things and plenty of decisions that were made, and nobody ever questioned it when it came to my adoption. And so me being in foster care, the state never made any decisions for us. They gave my adoptive / foster mom full permission to make all medical decisions for me. The only reason she had to adopt me is because her contract was up.
Okay.
Her contract was,
What about the kids that would it be unethical if a child wants to be adopted, or?
Well, most children want a family. They think that that's what adoption is. But adoption does not guarantee no, it's not. Adoption doesn't guarantee a family. You
It
adopting
doesn't.
that child? No, it does
Oh,
not.
like in your case is different, and I get that. I'm
Do you
not.
know how many children are rehomed every year?
It's
About
7 out of
25% of children are rehomed, or 25% of adoptions fail. At least that's what I heard.
75%.
Oh, well, even higher. Okay.
Well, it's 7 out of 10, so 70%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is that a legal this is literally just a legal contract
That we
and
cannot get out of.
that we can never get out of.
Actually,
And how
when
is
you're
that
adult,
ethical to enter a child into a legal contract that they can never ever get out of,
when you're
regardless
19,
of
you
how
can
their
do that.
family treats them?
When you're 19, you can. And
You cannot
we
No,
annul
you
a
No,
can't.
there's
Only
not.
the
family.
adopted parents can can rescind it.
And you can be readopted, but my mom's dead. How is she going to readopt me?
I'm saying when
My
you're
mom doesn't have the
19,
mental faculties.
We can't be emancipated either.
when you're 19, why can't you be emancipated?
Because
They
you
don't
will.
emancipate adoptees.
No, and foster youth either. You are a ward of the state until you age out. There is no emancipation from foster care.
What I'm saying is, like, first of all, when you're 19 or of legal age in whatever state you live in, okay, you can go get your birth certificate changed.
No,
And
you can't.
Yeah, well, no.
I tried this for years. You can't.
You can get your birth certificate changed, but it doesn't go back to your original. So like if I were to go change my name, right, to my biological mother's, I'd still have my adoptive parents on there.
On what?
On your birth certificate.
Why does that matter? I guess whether or not
Because why would I legally want to be attached to these people anymore?
you're not at that point.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
It's all a mindset.
It's not a mindset because
It's like
there's
this.
legal
When you get a
ramifications.
divorce,
Many states in the United States have mandatory laws on the books that force you to take care of your aging parents. If you are adopted, in
Familial
no way
laws.
to
No,
annul your. Yes,
I would
there is.
disagree with that.
You can disagree all you want, but there's laws on the books, and I don't know what to tell you.
Oh, well, tell me what laws they are.
All right, give me a second.
Okay.
You can also go look it up, adoption rights, and it goes state by state.
But
I mean, some people can't even get their original birth certificates for 99 years in a
Yep.
day in 22
Washington,
states.
Oregon, 19 states are fully closed. 19 are, you need a court order and it takes one person to close it, and 12 are fully open.
When I was dealing with all of the issues with my birth certificate, one of the things that I asked the Social Security Administration is if there was any way for us to just undo my birth certificate so I didn't have these issues anymore. And they told me that there was no legal way other than me to be adopted again.
How can you be
Let's see.
adopted? How old were you at this point?
Brian!
How old were you at this point?
Bro, did you leave a fucking knife out?
Oh, jeez. You can
Bro,
be
he got
adopted
his
as an
finger.
adult,
Go
but
see
that
what he
doesn't
got
make it.
into. I'm so sorry. My son just cut his finger. I gotta go.
All right.
No, I think that's great that you guys are, trying to make light of, different, trying to make the adoption process better and everything, But I don't know, and I do. My heart goes out to any kid. I've been father-like to my kids' friends and stuff like that. So I mean, I get that, And
Okay.
there should be some change, but I think that there are a lot of good success stories. And,
Okay, but what would you define as a success story? That's what I keep asking.
well, I'm a success story.
Okay, but you get to determine it, right?
Success is success, so yeah.
But there's no true definition of success. It's what the person deems as success, right? Because we all want different things. Would you consider Steve Jobs successful?
No,
And why not?
he didn't consider that because his own self, when he died, he said that when he can't, he talked about when you can't take anything with you, and he wishes he would have done, other things rather than make all the money because he felt it was, pointless. I mean, because it didn't, keep him here any longer. And there's some things he wanted to do that he didn't because of his business practices. He was always working and.
Okay, but did you know he was also an adoptee?
Okay.
An adoptee that was given up.
He said himself he regrets being adopted, even though he felt successful or he seemed successful, right, in terms of adoption. He still would rather have been with his biological parents.
Well, hindsight is 2020, I think, and when you maybe his life turned out worse being with his biological parents. He doesn't know that. Regret is
he was in reunion with them.
Okay. Well,
the point is that he was talking about his own adoption trauma.
Okay.
And he said he would rather have not been adopted.
That's another specific, case. But I'm just saying, I guess I'm speaking from knowing my parents had 4 siblings and they adopted 4, and I saw her take care of 250 foster kids, and she wanted to adopt more, and all my siblings were way better off than being with their biological parents.
All your 4 siblings, in your subjective opinion, are better off in hindsight.
Well, they were. Actually.
But then why is your opinion more worthy of weight than everybody else's?
Who said my opinion was worthy of weight than everybody else's? I'm telling you.
That's how it seems. You're talking.
Well, I'm telling you the facts.
You're telling
those aren't facts.
But those aren't facts, because if they were given the resources that they needed, they could have definitely, we don't know the stories, and I don't need to know the stories. They could have had, gotten things together. Did you know it takes about, on average, $2,500 to keep a family together? On average.
Well, here's what I'm telling you. I know the stories on these 4 people. Okay. And they were taken away. My 2 of them were given up. And no, one of them was given up, and one of them was abandoned, and another one, let's see here, the other one, her mom suffered from mental illness and couldn't take care of her, and so and my biological mother gave me up. And so I think to myself, rather than having a person that can't take care of me or can't take care of a child in these cases, or if you can't, if you don't have the mental capacity to raise this child properly, then it needs to find another family. It's good. That's a good thing.
Okay, but that doesn't mean that the legal process as we have it needs to stay. Nor does it mean that the legal process is ethical.
I never said the legal process, some of the parts about it, but I never said some of the parts about it weren't ethical or unethical. Like I said in the beginning, I said that there were people that should not be adopting. They should have to mandatory attend classes. They should have.
Hey Dan, I want to ask you a question. Last year there was a story that came out, and it was really big in the adoptee community, about a white couple from Virginia who had adopted 5 black foster children and kept them in a shed and enslaved them. And so they recently were charged this year, and you can look this up. Between the mother and the father, the foster mother and foster father, they received over 300 years in prison for what they did to those kids. Do you know how many more kids that is happening to? This is just the one we know about. And so when we're looking at this, we're looking at not only the everyday average story of foster care or of adoption, but we're also looking at the very, very harmful and like dark side of foster care and adoption. And a lot of times people can't see past that because they've been sold adoption propaganda their entire lives. If you look at almost every there are so many pop culture moments that are rooted in adoption and foster care and safe external care. Spider-Man was a kinship placement, you know, Superman was a international adoptee. You know, you get what I'm saying. You have the Matildas, the Annies. But at its core, adoption is not benefiting the children as much as people think it is.
On that note, and I'm going to repeat it because I know Olivia heard it before. Stan Lee, actually both Disney and Walt Disney adopted. Stan Lee was going to
Boo
adopt
him. I hate Walt Disney.
What?
I hate Walt Disney. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I hate him for that, and among other reasons. Anyway,
Just so many things.
Listen, I like the movies. Don't like him. Anyway, how do I know that? Because it's in his autobiography. Like what? So Stanley was talking about it, and he said that he was going to adopt, and when he found out how unethical it was, and this was like in the 40s, he decided not to because of all the trauma, and it wasn't best for the child.
Yeah.
So he even recognized this during the time that Georgia Tann was doing the shit that she was doing. And if you don't know who Georgia Tann is, please go look her up. I'm not talking about her today, but he even recognized that when she was starting with the human trafficking of unwed, of black market babies and unwed mothers. So, yeah.
There are some dark spots in pretty much every chapter in life, you know. But I do think that like Stan Lee, I mean, I don't know, he was kind of a strange guy. I mean, nice guy and everything, and you know, he believed in his comic books, and you know, I guess I never heard him, but when you have an opinion, you know, I mean, like let's say if you go through a good adoption and you find a good family and you feel like people still shouldn't be adopted. But if you come from a bad situation, of course you're going to feel that way. But like I said, I think you guys are right about some stuff. I mean, there should be.
Wait. I had a good experience.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a great one, and I still don't think that adoption is necessary.
There are plenty of adoptees who have had good adoption experiences and still believe that adoption is unethical and should not be around.
Because we're talking about the legal process. You're talking about the bare fucking minimum, sorry, excuse my language, that any adult can provide, right? I, as a parent, provide 3 meals a day. He has a roof over his head and anything else that he might need. I'm also very trauma informed because of this, right? But that doesn't mean that someone else couldn't provide that same thing.
But
It's just a different legal process, right?
Maybe these people were chosen for you.
Oh God.
No shit. Okay. No.
Yeah, I don't.
Nope. We're not doing that shit. Nope.
What shit?
I'm not doing the religion.
You said your adoption was positive, right?
Yeah, because
Okay, it doesn't sound like it.
I'm going to just say this. Never say that to an adoptee because honestly, we hate that.
Well, I am an adoptee and I like that. That's
okay. Well, fine. Most adoptees don't like that. Let me
don't
rephrase
say that we're chosen. Like, if I was truly chosen for it to be more child-centered than it was, I would have been with my great-grandparents.
My mother,
But it's just
out of
more-
250 kids chose me.
I don't care.
You were the one.
No, I do not care what your mother provided. Yes, she provided the bare fucking minimum. Great. Any adult can do that. Wait, hold on. No. Any adult can do that. We are talking about a difference of legal process. Just because a foster parent does things does not mean they are safe home. Just because you're adopted does not mean you are in a safe home.
Can I say
Majority of
something real quick
adoptees,
too, though?
yeah,
Can I
go
say
ahead.
something? Because when it comes to people, and we just recently had this conversation about how a lot of leftists and a lot of liberals will tell women how many children they can have. And so, does nobody question the fact that she fostered 250 people? Like,
No.
does nobody question the fact that you cannot divide yourself that thin, even if it's spread over 10 years? How many children did she have in her home at one time? And how many biological mothers are demonized for having that same amount of children?
You
Because
have to.
200, even we need to do some math. I need a calculator.
My
Because
mother
how
was a very strong woman.
that's
Okay.
fine. But I need to do some
Huh?
math.
It
How
doesn't
long
matter.
did she foster for? I have questions. How long did she foster for? Was it 10 years,
Probably.
20 years?
Um, it was like 20, 25 years, I think, ish. And some of these kids were some of these foster kids were babies. Some of them were placed for,
What was the most amount of kids that you remember being in the home at one time?
um, let's see here.
And also what
Yeah,
state you're in? Because I want to do the math on how much money she was getting for those kids.
it wasn't about the money.
It's always about the money.
It wasn't about the money.
People say that.
I bet
It
it was.
It's
wasn't about the
always, no,
money.
it may not have been the leading cause, but if the money did not exist, there is
Well,
a greater likelihood that that child would not remain in that home.
well, I get it. Some foster parents are like that, but my parents, nothing
99% of people
extravagant.
who receive any type of subsidy for a child are more likely to keep that child because of that subsidy or without it.
Well, I can say that, like I said, she picked and chose who she had in her home, and she felt like it was her calling to do. And you have to have extra money to take care of extra children.
Actually, they give you money to provide.
That's
Also
that's what
calling,
she was
that's
just saying. That's what
yes,
I said.
but it depends on the child, it depends on the state. And also if you're
If you do it full time, if you're a full time foster parent,
they don't
it,
want you working.
you have to have some sort of type of, well, no, because you could work if you had teenagers. If you
They
took in
usually
nothing
do
but
not like you
teenagers,
working so that you can deal with the children.
Okay, so I
but
did some, she on average had 10 children a year. On average, I don't know if that it was a consistent thing, but on average, your foster mom had 10 children a year.
okay,
If you believe truly that she could spread herself that thin for
she
10
could.
children for a year, it doesn't, the amount of children that she fostered, the money matters. Because even my foster mom over 20 years only fostered 15 children.
Well, of course, the money matters. I mean, because that's how they pay for food and extra children. My parents weren't doctors or lawyers or, but they lived in a gorgeous house, huge house that they got just for the sake of filling it with kids. They love kids. Kids were their life.
I understand that kids are my life too, and I have repeatedly taken in children from my community
Right.
and people in my life. But 250 kids over 25 years, as a person who is outside of the situation, if you remove yourself and you heard anybody else doing that, I think you would question that just
Why?
for
Some people
ethical
have
and
that
morality
strength.
reasons.
Can we
Some
rewind
people
for a
have that
second?
strength.
He also
Yeah,
said calling, which was white saviorism.
100%.
I'm what?
Can we
No,
can
no,
we
no. I
pause
said
for a
you
second? 'Cause
said
there's
it was their calling, which was giving white saviorism.
Explain what do you mean by white
Wait,
saviorism?
hold on. Before we get into that, because that's a whole nother thing. Carcella, what were you saying?
Sorry.
literally there's you guys are having two completely different arguments here.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Dan is going to be able to jump into the actual legal discussion.
That's what it's
I don't think
giving.
you want me to.
No, because you're not.
The
Because
whole thing
your
was
whole
You're
about
telling me like you have
your whole
responsibility
thing.
in
I am
certain
talking.
states.
I am talking.
You are telling me in certain
The
states
whole
that
time you have
you have to
talked.
take care of your grandparents and you
Yes,
don't know what
it
you're talking
literally
about.
29 states. Do you want me to list them for you? Would you like me to list those states for you?
She muted him.
Listen, ultimately,
You are having a discussion about whether or not your personal experience should be transposed onto a legal process because it was good for you in your opinion, which you have every right to have about your own personal experience of adoption. However, we are speaking about a legal process. We are not talking about how everybody individually experiences adoption. We are talking about the universal facts of adoption. We are talking about birth certificates being changed. We are talking about loss to medical history. We are talking about the failure to enforce open adoptions. These are the things we're talking about. We're talking about the loss of human rights. This is not about whether or not your personal family treated you well and you enjoyed your time with them, because that can be true and the process can also be unethical.
Okay.
He dropped, and I had to mute him because I
Oh,
just did not like the way he was speaking over her.
I
Sorry.
was gonna go for Lucille, whatever her name is, but she just dropped. All right. I gotta go soon, so I'm not gonna bring anyone else up. I will be back in 2 weeks, I promise. Maybe.
I like this live.
What?
I said I liked your live today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, it is Mother's Day that weekend. Yeah, we'll figure it out. No, it's not Mother's Day that weekend. My bad. I can't think. I'm just going off what our co-parenting schedule is, so. Yeah. I'm tired. But thank you guys for coming up. Thank you, Olivia, Carousel, Silence, and Rose, and Cajun, and whoever else was up. Yeah. So I will do more posts on this. I already have stuff on my other platforms. I already have videos up. So if you guys want to go see that, yeah, it's all up there.
Awesome. I can't wait to do this again. Thank you for having me up, Disney. This was
You're welcome.
nice. I like this. Even
Yeah,
though
sorry.
too.
Sorry, guys. So Kinky, whatever your name is. Every judge for every approved adoption, doesn't matter what type it is, gets a $4,000 bonus. Okay? If it's foster care, if it's kinship, if it's guardianship, all of them get bonuses for saying yes. Every single one.
and that's the proof is in the pudding, because how many times have you heard them really just say no? How many I would like to meet someone who tried to be adopted and the judge denied it.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see that.
Rarely. I've heard of like maybe one or two stories.
I don't think I've
But
ever heard of one. So now I'm on the hunt. I have to collect another part of our community.
why does it cost money? Because yes, even in California, we're talking about judges. Look up Georgia Tan, Eva. I'll do another video on her, but yes, they do, Kinky. They get $4,000 bonuses. Oh my God, I'm tired. Anyway.
And it's a federal bonus.
Yeah, it's a
federal
federal. It's
thing.
not a state bonus.
It's federal. They don't.
Also, the politicians get money from the agencies to push laws that make it so that we can't get rights, FYI. So, I will be back in, not next weekend, the weekend after.
Okay.
Go live, probably. So you guys can, yeah, I like to spend time with my kid when he's here now, because our co-parenting schedule has changed.
Oh, okay. I was wondering why I hadn't really heard from you, and I was like, I just figured stuff was going on. So
Well, between that, the laptop, which, yeah, yeah, I hadn't read one book in April because of all of that. So, yeah. How do you finalize keeping your kids? You can do a guardianship. I mean, there's different types of ways.
I'm gonna
Also-
work on a background for us.
Okay. Also, if you are if they're related to you, like that doesn't matter. But if you are step parent guardian, right? I think that's what it is. Like when I when my dad was watching my son, like if I was at work or something or school, no problem, Olivia. I had a paperwork that I had notarized so that if anything were to happen and he had to have medical decisions made, he could do that. So he had that covered. So that also covers you, just saying. That totally works. The one time that it was necessary, he just called me and I rushed over to the hospital. Was it foster care? Because if it's foster care, it gets more complicated. And it depends on the state. But you can message me and we'll talk. Anyway, love you guys, and I'll see you guys another time.